Hello and welcome to a GRAPPL Spotlight Special. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
And joining us, it's Rev Pro owner and promoter. It's the third man in the booth. It's Andy Quildan. Andy, how's it going, mate?
He's going great, thanks. He's going great, thanks. I meant to say he's going great, guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
We've been excited to get you on, mate. It feels like it's been at a very, very long time coming. To be honest, when Joe left the podcast and we needed like a EastEnders correspondent or just somebody in general to fill in and be the new Rev Joe, be the Rev Andy, we did consider giving you a call, but we thought maybe your price might be too high.
It probably would have been, and I've dipped in and out of EastEnders over the years, but I'm back in at the moment, actually. So if you do want a little EastEnders recap at the end, then I'm more than happy to assist.
Do you know Steph's gone like full retro, hasn't she, JP? Like Joe's doing the same thing. Like she's watching like 2008 EastEnders, and it's like, I know we all do stuff like that as wrestling fans, and we'll go back like we just did UK Rampage 91 as a podcast, and like it's kind of a thing with wrestling fans. I didn't know it was a thing with soap fans. Maybe there's a whole like retro podcast industry out there. If we could get you into somehow.
I mean, I'd be up for it. I need to make some money somewhere because wrestling's not doing it. So.
What's the attitude era of soaps? Like, what is the peak era? I'm not having 2008, but the steps. I'm thinking
it's got to be like Grant versus Phil, hasn't it? You know, listening to the affair in the tape in the Vic. You know, it's got to be that. They recently redid that storyline, so. Is that they recycle the stories, but I actually got back in. This is not a soap podcast, I'm aware, but I actually got back in. I got back in.
It always has been on the quiet.
Yeah. I got back into EastEnders because I've basically I got into Neighbours again, which is when I was a kid, I watched Neighbours all the time, and then I watched it. When they said Neighbours was getting kicked off the TV screens, I watched maybe the final couple of weeks and I fell back in love with Neighbours. And then when it came back, I felt obliged to kind of get involved. So my daily routine now, it starts with an episode of Neighbours Monday to Thursday. But then we've since heard that Neighbours is getting cancelled at the end of the year. So I've had to try and fill that hole with something. So that's where we've got back into EastEnders. So I'm doing a bit of groundwork with EastEnders at the moment. So
they've been threatening that for years, haven't they, JP? I feel like that was like we were talking about like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it feels like something that they'd cancelled at some point. Am I right in thinking, Andy, it's on Amazon Prime?
Yeah, so it was on Channel 5. It got cancelled 2021, 22, something like that. It was gone for a year. Amazon Prime bought it back, but they made the mistake of bringing it back with Freevee instead of just straight Amazon Prime. And lots of old people, like my mother-in-law, for example, she had no idea how to get Freevee. But if you said Amazon Prime, she would have figured it out. Freevee's gone out of business. It's fulfilling its contractual obligations on Amazon Prime, and then it's done. So we need maybe Peacock can pick it up or something when it loses all its WWE premium live events. I've pulled it back round like a pro for you.
Same thing with wrestling, though, isn't it? Like there's so many like comparisons because that's literally what's happening in America. Obviously, they've signed this gigantic deal with Netflix, and we get some of like the retro stuff like over here, but like in America, like the whole back catalogue, nobody knows what's going to happen to it. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's like that with like same thing with wrestling. We all say we'll watch it, but do we? Like, how much do we actually dig into the archives and watch it? Like, I think, but it's more the idea, isn't it? You'd like the idea of having it going. I could go back and watch 1990s like Grant and Phil if I wanted to.
Yeah, you just like it to be there for you. So my big thing was I started watching all the nitros in order from the start, and I got to it'd be probably 98 when it went up to 3 hours and it became unbearable. So at the start I was able to binge watch it, right? But then when it got to 98, it became very, very hard to watch and it was a slog. So I only watched bits I was watching it a lot slower. And then I knew obviously the end of the network was coming. And then I just didn't do anything about it. And then that last day I had this immense sense of regret because I may never get to complete every episode of Monday Nitro.
So people with physical in it winning in the NJP, like Matty, the people who got the DVDs, the people who held on to that physical media, they're going to win out in the end. It's all going to survive.
But it is, and I'll be interested to know your thoughts on it, Andy. Like, do you think physical media making a comeback rather than digital streaming? Do you still
VHS tapes could come back?
Yeah. So I'm in the process. So I've moved houses a lot. So every time I move house, I kind of have to say goodbye to a lot more of my collection. But I did hang on to my Silver Vision VHS cassettes. DVDs not so much. I heard a rumor that DVDs actually, after a certain amount of time, just stop working. They've only got a certain amount of plays in them. So I don't really know how solid DVD is as a form of physical media. I might just be making this up. I don't know. I just
they
heard a rumor.
deteriorate, I think, over time.
Okay.
Mine did anyway. I wasn't very good with them. They all got scratched. But when I was moving out to Thailand, I tried to sell all mine on eBay. Matty did it for me, JP, and like every second disc he's tried to sell has been sent back going, that one doesn't work, that one doesn't work. So I think there's my old like 2000s ROH stuff. There's definitely some truth to that, but that might just be me. I didn't take care of it enough,
Just don't let my other half know this, because she's been wanting me to shift out all these Blu-rays and DVDs for quite a serious amount of time, so I can fit in more kids stuff. So yeah, can't never let her know that.
Even if the DVDs don't work, you just like to know that they're there, right?
Yeah. If nothing else, it's like if you go into your front room and you just want like the way people have their bookshelves up. You're not rereading all those books.
Right.
It's more like filler, isn't it? It just sort of fills in the gaps from like a sort of like a blank wall.
But I don't think it's going to make a comeback, just because I feel like everything's just so instantaneous now, and I feel like if you look at just with the house hunting stuff, like houses are minimalist now. So like you go around a house and there's no clutter or anything. It's not it's not like going to your nan's house with all the ornaments and stuff on every shelf, on every wall. So I just think that people just like clean space now, and I think that's more than anything, I think that's going to be the downfall of physical media. And I think as the late we might hang on to it, but we are the equivalent of our nans when we were children, right? So people are going to come to our houses and they're going to see all this crap just stacked up, and they're just that
all the power slams from 1987.
Right. I've not got rid of my power slams. I've still got those.
Good man.
Up. So.
My mum binned all mine. Like when I was about 18, it was like, he's 18 now. He'll be done with that wrestling stuff. It's fine. We'll just sell them all. I dread to think like what the value is of that box of magazines. Although saying that, at this point, we've done that, haven't we? You can get like the yearbook of Parcel, and they've started doing that. So that's better. Compact space. It's all in one little thing, and you've still got it. Maybe more of that needs to do that with like the Aptomags or something like that, or the old WWF magazines. I had that massive pile
how
of.
Good would it be like? With the Aptomags and all the old pictures and like obviously the kayfabe articles, that'd just be so good. And like, but I'm the type of person that I'd get something like that, and then I need to get the TV which surrounds it. So I need to then start watching all the stuff they're talking about. I did that when I started reading all the old Observers. I'd then have to go. Oh, maybe actually it started with a binge watching of the Nitro. I'd watch the Nitro and I'd be like, "What the fuck was that?" And then I'd find the corresponding Observer. So then I was reading the Observers and watching the Nitros as we were going. It was quite a time,
Were you an
That's a question. Go on. Yeah, I was literally going to ask that, JP. Like, because we've been warned off. We're going to try not to ask you, how did you get into wrestling? How did you get into refereeing? Type questions. I want to know what I think JP was going. How did you get into like hardcore fandom? Was it like was it Power Slam like the rest of us? Were you one of the early internet adopters? Like, what was your route through?
So the first magazine I remember which had any kind of kayfabe broken in it. So I think I was a smart wrestling fan because I just wanted to consume myself with pro wrestling. But I was the type of fan who probably thought he was smart when he wasn't at all, because I just wanted to know more than all my friends. I was a wrestling specialist in my school, right? And and I used to read like obviously I just remember like it was like kind of the Aptomags and stuff like that, which had they would have like obscure results in them, so these random independent promotions, so you'd learn names of wrestlers that no one else knew. But in terms of like being smart to it, the first magazine I remember is actually called Wrestling Big Shots. It was like back in the 90s, obviously everything, they just tried to turn everything into a magazine, like any topic just turned it into a magazine. And Wrestling Big Shots used to have real names of real wrestlers, and it used to have backstage gossip in there, but it was predominantly a poster magazine from what I remember. But it just
I think I remember
a lot of news in there. So there's that. Then there was obviously Power Slam magazine. Before the internet, there was teletext. So you used to be able to get quite a lot of information on teletext. I had
I've got to know now which Which corner of teletext are we saying here? Because I was at a digitizer, man. Do you ever go on Paramount Text? They had like a letters page where like you're supposed to talk about what was going on Paramount TV, but wrestling fans just took it over. You could find those little corners.
Yeah, so I was too poor to have Sky, so just rub it in my face, why don't you?
It took till I was 13, but yeah,
some of us were privileged, but it's all right. But yeah, and so teletext was a big one. And that got me a lot. And I actually I started my first entrepreneurial business from teletext, actually getting computer game cheat codes from the teletext pages. I used to get up every morning, and there used to be a teletext page which had the cheat codes in there. And obviously back in the day, you'd have to spend a tenner on like a book or something. And every day they'd have like different games, cheat codes, and I'd write them all down in a notebook and then sell them for like 20p each or whatever, So that was my first little business thanks to teletext. And then
which games are we talking, by the way? What was
So, it would have been PlayStation 1, and I can't remember, I can't remember the games specifically, but it was, it was a good time, and I was taking requests at some points as well, and then you could write in and request cheats for certain games, and then hope your thing came up. But then, so then from teletext, I got into the internet. I was an early adopter to the internet. Back in the days of the forums when you didn't even need to have like a username and password, and you could hide behind fake accounts, much like Twitter these days. But yeah, you could hide behind the fake accounts, and whatever. I think they were like BraveNet forums, and then obviously from there, UK Fan Forum, and then I found the rest.
Everyone was on UK Fan Forum.
Yeah,
everyone.
And that was peak, really. That was peak for professional wrestling, the UK Fan Forum, I believe. I know it still exists to some extent now.
Still there. You can still find the old posts. That's my biggest problem with it. I want them taken down. To be honest, I don't want anybody to be able to search some of the things that went on in there in the past. I feel like that about most message boards from the 2000s. But like, I think that's true. I think like any British fan who tells you like, or talks about like growing up reading Meltzer and stuff. Like, you didn't really, did you? You probably grew up the same way we all did. Like you say, teletext was a way in for me. Then, like the fact that Power Slam was just sold in the newsagents. You know what I mean? Old school wrestling people and talk about like keeping kayfabe and protecting the business and stuff. And it's like in the UK, you could literally buy a magazine at WH Smith that told you all of the inner workings of wrestling, which I think is a key actually to a lot of the way a lot of us process wrestling as British wrestling fans. I always think we've been a bit different like that, but that was always our way in. We were reading to be fair, we were reading Dave Meltzer, but it was through the filter of Finn Martin. Like I'd be ringing the Power Slam hotline and getting Meltzer's scoops, but I'd be getting them from Finn Martin. He was like the translator for us, wasn't he? That was like most people's in.
Yeah, and he's just essentially being able to copy and paste the Observer news. But yeah, it wasn't until quite a bit later when the Observer was on the internet that I started reading the Observer regularly. And then
the FOW stuff.
Yeah, right, and that just opened my mind to a whole nother world. But of course, I was aware of who Dave Meltzer was prior to that. But I think he just became a whole lot more accessible from that point where it all just became available online.
Yeah.
Were you one of those people? And as soon as it felt like you saw how the sausage was made, it became even more interesting at that point, and then you end up spiraling down a path of just like what we do now, which is just like filling in the gaps of history and consuming everything.
So I think it was very much like I grew up with wrestling, is what I'll say, right? So when I first got into it, it was a cartoon wrestling, and I was a kid and I was seeing these real life superheroes before my very eyes, and then as I started to get a bit older, so like some of the cartoon gimmicks might be a bit silly, like obviously there's Bret Hart, who was real in this world of make-believe, right? So I obviously gravitated towards Bret Hart, and then as you move into your awkward teenager years, there was the Attitude Era, with all the swear words and the scantily clad ladies and
and all those mates. I don't know if you lived the same life as we did, but like I know we're around the same age. All those mates who were following along with it, were like for Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan in the early 90s, we all disappeared. Did you have that one day at school in like 1998 where it was like, hang on, everyone like Stone Cold Steve Austin now? Where were you fuckers 2 years ago? Where were you during In Your House Beware of Dog? Like, what's going on?
Right, so everyone's back now around the Attitude Era, but I think that's where I doubled down as a smart mark.
Right.
I
You
know
like the
everything
baddies
about
now?
this wrestling, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
You like the
So
wrestlers
then,
do more moves?
yeah, and then, but then I think, yeah, it did. Like, obviously, once you get like, because once I was in, I was a lifer with professional wrestling.
Yeah.
So yeah, so basically, when I got into wrestling, that was it. You know, it was lifer. There's no way around it. But then I guess there comes a time when you do look at it and think maybe this is a little bit silly, right? But
Yeah.
then to be able to justify that, you start looking for the magic behind the art, so to
Yeah.
speak, or you start trying to understand it and watch it from a different vantage point. And I guess probably fitted in with life in general as well, because that would probably be around the time when DVDs started coming out, and you'd get, you know, the director's commentary over movies. You could
Yeah.
listen to the audio, and you could try and understand the art of cinema as well. And I
Yeah.
think for me, wrestling is it's theatre at its simplest form, and I think so often people just I don't even know how they somehow just seem to be able to miss that point, that what you're
Yeah.
watching is theatre. You know,
Mm.
there are going to be good guys, there are going to be bad guys, that we are following stories, and wrestling is designed to make you feel. And if you don't feel something, you know, if you're just watching it at base value of, oh, move, and you're not feeling, is it really doing its job properly? Is the magic really still there? So I feel like that's kind of how I transitioned into that kind of know it
Yeah.
all, or want to know it all, or trying to
Yeah.
figure out and trying to guess where stuff's going, and being that obnoxious, well, I would have done it this way. You know, that's where that all came from, I guess.
We still do it now. That's what we do. That's our whole business model, there, mate.
That's our bread and butter. That is, isn't it?
But I think we all go through that point, don't we? I was going to say, JP, it's like when, like, you know, again, when I'm like 1997, 1998, starting to read Power Slam, you think you're figuring out, and you're like, oh, the heels are the better wrestlers. I like heels now. That'll make me different from my mates. And then it turned into, I think me and my best mate in school thought Billy Gunn was the best wrestler because he did the most moves. And to us, we just a misreading the Power Slam, really. That meant work rate. That meant he was better. That meant he was the best. It might have been true in some ways, but like you kind of like you inch your way in, don't you, until you get there's a Jay that doesn't think we are current day JP. Like that was, I was gonna say that, Andy, like you still, like, obviously it being your business and, you know, in your life and your passion and all of that, can you still access like that part of your brain? Like how do you consume like wrestling these days? Is it purely just literally I wouldn't have done it that way, I would do it this way? Is it purely from a business minded point of view? Can you sit back and watch wrestling? Can you sit back, listen to podcasts even about wrestling? How's your brain wired for it?
So I love listening to podcasts about wrestling because I love hearing people break it down and give their opinion. Like sometimes I'm like, I completely disagree with that opinion, but it's interesting to hear people's thoughts, the way they break stuff down. I think for me, like it's very important that when you are listening to people's thoughts and whatever, it's they provide context, they provide justification, because, you know, there's no such thing as a wrong opinion. There's bad opinions, but there's no such thing as a wrong opinion. But I just feel like as long as you can give your reasons why, I'll always listen. I'll always be interested, negative, positive, indifferent. You know, I think it's very important to try and listen to as many voices around professional wrestling, and not just, you know, from people within the industry, from fans, to people new to wrestling, to the old timers. You know, I'm fascinated by that stuff still, and the way people read stuff. I do try so hard to watch wrestling for enjoyment. I really do, but on so many times, like you said, like I kind of look at it and say, I would have done it differently. I would have done it this way. I would have done it that way. And that kind of and that part of me, I just can't seem to shut down, no matter how much I try. And sometimes it can be quite frustrating for me, because I know what we're able to achieve with Rev Pro with so little resources, in terms of manpower and financial resources, and how much we're able to generate from so little. And then I look at, you know, some other stuff that I watch, and I'm like, wow, if I had a fraction of that, imagine what we could achieve. You know, so and sometimes that when that happens, I'll wind up, I might be all in on a product for a few weeks, and then I might be off it for a while, because because it's so frustrating, you know. And like you know, when this stuff happens, I'll always try to get on board. So like, you know, when WWE went to Netflix, I was like, right, new chapter of WWE, I'm going to see this. And then that was one of the just me smashing my head against the wall moments, that Netflix debut, because like I was watching it, and I was like, this is above and beyond the industry of professional wrestling. It's so slickly produced. It's so, it's so large. It transcends what we think pro wrestling is, right? And no one's ever going to stop it, right? But I watched it and I was like, you're missing the point. You're missing your target audience. You have this opportunity for the first time in a long time to reach just this huge audience of fans who never normally watch it. And we've just got this slow plodding show that goes for 3.5 hours, and then at the end of it I don't feel like I ever want to watch another pro wrestling show ever again, right? And really the Netflix style isn't about that. The Netflix style is about episodic drama, where you get the hooks in at the end of the episode. I've got to tune in next week, right? Netflix, you want to conceivably be able to sit and binge, right? I'm telling you now, if anyone can sit and binge Raw from this year since it came on Netflix, more power to you, and look, there's a lot of good stuff on Raw as well. I don't want to be sat here being like, oh, I'm anti this and anti that. I just think WWE's put itself in a situation where I can pick and choose. I can literally, because it's so accessible now, I can literally go on Raw and I can be like, right, I just want to watch the main event. I just want to watch this promo. I just want to watch that entrance or whatever. So easy to do. I don't have to watch the whole show, which is why I kind of find it hilarious when Dave Meltzer tries to break down the Raw ratings and he's looking at the average minutes watched and whatever. And I'm just like, in this day and age, it's inconsequential how many minutes of Raw are watched. So it's about how many individual views, really, because, I watch it, I pay for my Netflix subscription, but I might only watch 20 minutes a week, right? So that's not even going to count as one view. So I just think like, it's almost like aside from measuring it against itself in terms of, how many nutters are watching 3 hours of Raw every week, right? Aside from measuring it against itself, I think that metric is kind of stupid, right? Because it's the game's changed. The game's changed drastically. But like I say, like I when I watch that, I'm just like, it's not geared. I always think it's not geared towards its target audience. And I don't think there's a right or wrong, but it'd be like the equivalent of me going to a holiday camp and putting on, like Ishii and Jay Joshua, it's like you have to look at what good wrestling is good wrestling, and high level wrestling will resonate with that audience, but you have to understand what your audience wants and try and deliver what they want and kind of do it in a way where by the end of it they want more and they will invest in your product, rather than at the end of it they're just like, I'm good until next year.
Yeah, because we all know people who are like, we've all got that friend or that cousin who's like, oh, did you see that? Did you know that WWE's on Netflix? And it's like, yeah, mate, I'll do a weekly wrestling podcast. I'm aware. Thank you. Did you hear this about Hulk Hogan? Yes, I do know. But like, we all have those people though, who are literally like, oh, the Royal Rumble's on that. Like, I think that was shown in like you say, when you compare it against itself, you see that people tuned in for the Rumble when it was first on Netflix, because people have got that attachment to it. They know what a Royal Rumble is.
Exactly. And what I think is crazy as well is that, like, so again, just the breakdowns, everyone's saying like, oh, I don't believe Royal Rumble did more than WrestleMania, but like, I'm just like, well, I don't think it would have done if WrestleMania was one night instead of two, right? But when you think about the Royal Rumble as an event, like, it's just synonymous with WWE. It's synonymous with people's childhoods, and so I feel like Royal Rumble is always going to have that big event feel, and it's always going to be one of the key events, and obviously they're trying to make SummerSlam that event now as well, but I always think, I know they're kind of close to each other, but Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, they're two huge events, and they're always going to generate interest from the outside fan, which is why WWE are in such a great position, because it doesn't matter how they do throughout the year, which obviously they're always going to do great because they've got so much money coming in, but they have an opportunity to reinvent themselves every Royal Rumble and every WrestleMania, where they've got those outside eyeballs. Whether or not they've actually done a good job of hooking those in, that's up for debate, right? But they have that opportunity, and it doesn't matter what happens between now and the Royal Rumble. Next January, the Royal Rumble is going to be huge again. So it's that chance again to, get some fresh eyes on the product.
It's interesting you mentioned TV because I did want to ask you about this as well. I mean, how is it in terms of? I mean, because we think of WWE and AEW, they are effectively they're in the television entertainment production industry, really, for the most part. That's what they produce, and that's not something that you do with Rev Pro. I mean, there was obviously for free sports, there was the short period of time. Has that always been something that you thought would perhaps it would fundamentally change what Rev Pro is and what you want to produce if you are being sort of straitjacketed by having to produce a television product?
Look, so again, like I said, going back to that term, good wrestling is good wrestling. I believe that we'd be able to translate our product across. Now, look, the free sport thing is, we don't really talk about it much, but it was one of those times where basically, if a deal's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. But it was thrown together, like the actual, the taping, the booking of it, everything of it was thrown together in about 3 weeks, and even like from the tickets on sale as well. So it was hardly ideal, but it was almost one of those cases of we were kind of almost pushed into do it now or it might never happen. And obviously it did turn out to be too good to be true. But there was so many, again, as with everything with Rev Pro, there were so many limitations and handcuffs that we had put upon ourselves, that I just look at that as I'm very proud of those shows. I actually feel like we delivered for the turnaround time. And again, is everyone's first experience with TV, a TV production company that didn't want to do, they were kind of in the same boat as us, but they didn't want to put resources into it. They just wanted to do as little as possible. Essentially, they wanted to get as much, just live content, no video packages. They just wanted to kind of get something in the can to then kind of pump out, right? And I feel like given all of that knowledge and what happened, I can look back at those shows and I can say we had a number of very, very good ideas, and none of us knew what we were doing in terms of TV, but what I used it as a very big learning experience. So now I can produce a TV show. I can put it into a format which is understood by TV executives and production people and whatever have you. So I'm glad we did it because it gave me it's given me the confidence that if we ever did get to that stage where we got a TV deal, then I know we would smash it out of the park because we would approach it differently to every other promotion, right? And I think that's one of the keys in being an alternative to WWE is you have to present yourself differently. And obviously, I feel like AEW found the most success when it was presenting itself as something different to WWE. And then it had that period where it was almost just trying to be WWE and it lost that identity. And then it's having a bit of a comeback as of late, which I think a large part of that is down to remembering its identity, remembering where it came from, right? They're not trying to be WWE. They're trying to be unique. They're trying to be themselves. And I think that's one of the charms of AEW. And that's one of the charms of independent wrestling as well, is it doesn't have to pretend to be WWE. So I genuinely feel if we had another opportunity and it was, we had the right terms and whatever have you, I think we would absolutely smash it. And I'm confident we would absolutely smash it. And as long as the eyeballs were there for that first week, I guarantee you we would build that base and we'd turn it into something because, again, I just think I'm a connoisseur of television, right? So I watch a lot of TV. I watch a lot of episodic TV. I watch a lot of sport as well. And obviously TV and sport have that unique crossover. I feel that I'm in a unique position in terms of I always try to not be in that bubble. It's hard sometimes because it's very easy to be inside that pro wrestling bubble, right? But I try so hard to not be in that wrestling bubble. My wife has nothing to do with wrestling whatsoever. She doesn't care about wrestling, right? I have friends outside of wrestling. Obviously, I've got many friends inside of wrestling, but I have enough reality outside of that bubble that I'm able to kind of see the outside world and see what's working and what's not working and see, I guess, the kind of the nation's mood, so to speak. So like I feel like I'm kind of in a good position that I would approach it from not being in that wrestling bubble. Now, one of the things that I will say though is it's very easy for me to say this when I'm sat on the outside and I'm not on that week-to-week grind of producing shows, because I am producing shows on a weekly basis, right? And that comes with its challenges that people look at and don't realize. But and I guess a lot of my challenges come with out of necessity having to do the jobs of about 20 people. I said, like, you know, I run arena shows, right? And with me on my own being the only person that is responsible for every single aspect of it. And when you look at arena shows like that, and you look at traditional arena shows, and you ask yourself how many people are in a team that run an arena show, and that's just me, right? So, so I'm aware of all the challenges, and obviously when you move on to other tasks, it presents other challenges that you can't foresee. And when you're producing that week by week, you know, sometimes you might fall into that bubble because you can't. So it's like it's like almost like being in the middle of a forest and you can't see beyond the trees because you're just focusing on, you know, got to hit this next week. I've got to hit this next week, and you just get so consumed with it. Sometimes you aren't able to step away. Right now, I would like to think, with the benefit of my years in the business, I'm able to do that, right? However, with every change in circumstance, you sometimes find yourself slipping back in to those old habits, and you just can't help yourself, right? So I'm not saying, you know, like it's an easy job at all, and I'm not sitting here and going like I know what those guys that are producing this TV are going through. I'm just saying that I feel over the years I've developed all the tools and all the experience to be able to do something which is different in this space, you know. And I always feel like I've been ahead of that curve, you know. And I always remember, just for example, I'll give you a couple of examples. So one example is MMA, right? I was like, watch MMA, right? And I was preaching it to anyone who would listen to me. I said, MMA, they take the best aspects of professional wrestling and they take the best aspects of pro boxing, right? And then they add their own twist to it. Now, what we need to do is we need to look at what MMA is doing, and we need to take the best aspects of MMA and mix it with the best aspects of pro wrestling, right? And I remember Alex Shane slagging me off, going like, you know, we've got Andy over here who wants to live out his MMA fantasies, was the word. And I'm just like, you're missing the point, you know. Like this is you know, this is it's a big thing, you know, and you just got to look at the growth of MMA over that time. It was when no one was watching MMA, right? It's like, look at the growth of MMA over that time period and see that, right? I've also, for the last 3 years, been preaching about Lucha Libre, right? Over and over again, like, to anyone that will listen, I'm just like, look, Lucha Libre is the next, because obviously over the years, you see, and we spoke about it in terms of, you know, like going from that cartoon phase and then transitioning to the Attitude Era. There's always something on the horizon. Where, and like, obviously from an independent perspective, obviously there was like strong style wrestling, which found its way into WWE as well, you know. And I think that was a big thing with WWE as well when they started doing the in-ring stuff to a high standard. I think that's what AEW forced them to do. Really, it's like we need to focus on the ring work, and then the ring work becomes our higher standards, and then obviously it's another area where WWE can kind of be ahead of the game. But yeah, I've been saying Lucha Libre is the next evolution of professional wrestling, and look at the business in Mexico right now, right? And if anyone can figure out that business, right, then they're going to be onto something. And obviously WWE have noticed it. That's why they bought AAA, right? AEW and WWE might have noticed it because of AEW. Do you know what I mean? They might have lucked into it, right? But with AEW, you know, they've noticed it. Look at their work with CMLL and look at the guys, the wrestlers in CMLL. I don't think either of the promotions have tapped into the full potential yet. But I just look at it and I just say, look, this is a product which appeals to the mainstream market. And the reason I say that, if you look at Arena Mexico every week and look at the number of tourists, and when you look at the number of tourists, we're not looking at wrestling fans, we're just looking at people who are going on holiday to Mexico, right, who want to do something fun on a Friday night. So they go to Arena Mexico and they have a great time, right? Now, can we look at that and can we look at the aspects which appeal from that? You know,
Yeah.
the big characters, the costumes, the high flying, etc. Can we add context to it in form of the pro wrestling that we know and love, and that storytelling? And and when I say storytelling, I obviously appreciate there's storytelling in from week to week, from match to match, based on the finishes. But I'm talking about within the context of the matches. So rather than it being a firework display, we add context behind those moves, and almost going back to that less is more, kid, right? Make those high spots count. Do you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
we can harness that, right? And then we're onto something. And you look at, and again, really, it's common sense, because you look at one of the most successful wrestlers probably in the last ever, right, is Rey Mysterio Jr.,
Yeah.
right? And he's someone who was able to, despite his size, reach the top of his profession. And he was he obviously figured out how to work the Americanized style of professional wrestling and
Yeah.
mix in enough of his lucha libre to make him stand out and be different and almost compensate for what was missing in terms of his size. So like I say, like I feel like that's I feel like that's one of my strengths, is to be able to identify those
Yeah.
areas, and kind of, it's hard for me because I'm able to implement it as much as I can within Rev
Yeah.
Pro, but with the limitations we have, it's very hard, right?
Yeah.
And even in terms of developing talent, it's hard, because I feel our shows are kind of judged on a very, very high level, right? And people judge our shows against an AEW show, WWE show, New Japan show, right? And if you look at the resources available, so we've got quite a handicap against us, right? So it's, and people are looking at our shows and being like, they want every single show week in, week out to be that pay-per-view caliber show. So that's the pressure we try to live up
Yeah.
to. But obviously, when you're trying to develop talent as well, that's where it becomes a lot harder. And then people want to see the new talent. They want to say, like, you need to bring in this new talent. You need to use exciting talent, etc., etc. But then they're not so patient. Again, I guess it goes back to that today's generation. They want everything now, 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 now. So we're limited in terms of that, and obviously our resources.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's the balance, isn't it?
Yeah, get Mystico across on just a random weekend. Yeah, he'll just come across here and he'll just work.
Cheap
work
flight,
so,
He'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Very easy as well. I mean, it's
But
interesting.
I think that's.
Sorry,
Oh,
go on,
you
you first. No, you
Well, I was
first.
going to say that's where you're in like an interesting position for me, in that, like, I think running Rev Pro, running in Indy, I think it's wrestling promoting, like you're saying there with Mexico, but in like the old school fashion. It's hand to mouth, isn't it? It's the getting people into the building for the next show, and it's constantly thinking that. But to compare it to what JP brings up with like the gigantic mega deals like WWE have for TV now, and AEW have for TV as well, they're almost in a different business, because it's like they've got that guaranteed money. What's coming up on the next show has never been less important, at least for WWE. And we can say from our point of view, you see that sometimes in like the PLEs that they're doing. Whereas, I think you're seeing it from that other side of, like I say, running a company where those little differences matter. Each individual show has got to be able to sell on its own merit. It's the old school trying to shift tickets mentality that like has maybe been lost a little bit with the way WWE run the business now.
Yeah, and it's very much that. And everything's designed, our two main metrics obviously are ticket sales and our VOD numbers, right? So we need to do whatever we can to kind of move the needle on those numbers, right? But you do look at it and you say, yeah, they are AEW, WWE. They feel like more than ever like a different business altogether. But also it gives you hope, because you look at it and you say, look, we need a fraction of what they get to be able to take what we're doing to the next level. And I feel like having to live almost on show to show, and having to think about sustainability, and having to think about how we're able to grow this while staying in business, and and having to make those difficult decisions on budget and where we spend our money, etc., and thinking about long term instead of short term. I think all of that stuff combined, it just stands us in good stead for if anything were to come our way. So I just look at it like I'm getting a very good grounding, and I know it's a very long grounding in this business, but I feel like I don't know, it's weird. I feel like I'm in such a good position in terms of everything I've done, everything I've seen, and I just think it's just going to take the right person to come along, and it might be a pipe dream, but you know, even if it is a pipe dream, like the reality is we are creating a business which is growing year on year. Of course, you know, look, we get, so like, again, you can talk about the state of the economy in the UK, so it's almost like we're defying odds by being able to continue to grow. And I also look at it and I feel like if people would support us as a small UK business as well, and look at what we're able to achieve. Of course, look, it's a thing is we're not wrestling's not a it's, you know, outside of WWE, you know, you see our London mayor twerking for WWE, right? And outside of that, wrestling's not a glamorous thing, right?
No.
And it's not even like to the level of like boxing, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's grassroots boxing programs in boxing gyms and whatever have you. And look, part of this is I haven't chased down any of this stuff, and perhaps I don't do a good enough job of advertising what we do. But look, we do it from grassroots all the way up to the arenas, you know, and we put so much good into the community, and you know, we bring so many people into, you know, when we're in town, we bring so many people in. And again, I understand we're a very small footprint compared to what the giant of WWE is, but we're doing this in the UK. We're providing UK jobs. We're providing, you know, money back into the UK economy, and anything that comes in, right, goes straight back into the UK economy, right? So it's not like, you know, we're going to take our money and go off elsewhere. We're just using it to grow. Like everything is reinvested. So, like I say, like I feel like, you know, all it's going to take is, you know, could it be a TV company? Could it be investment from an outside source? Could it be one of the other wrestling promotions saying, like for example, an AEW saying, well, you know, look at what Rev Pro's doing. They could really be a developmental territory for us, and we can compensate them for doing that. And if they do that, then obviously we can use that money to grow ourselves, right? Or it could be a WWE that does that. You know, I'm not sitting here going like, you know, I think there's almost like a narrative that I'm anti WWE. I'm not anti WWE by any stretch of the imagination. You know, if it wasn't for WWE, I wouldn't have fallen in love with wrestling in the first place, right? My thing is, I just call stuff out as I see it, and sometimes I'm too honest, right? And I think that has been, over the years, maybe that's been my downfall. But like, you know, it's just one of those things whereby I just feel like if I'd rather be honest than and be true to myself, than tell lies, because I say if you tell lies, you get caught up in your lies, right? And I don't want to. I want to always stand by my principles. And again, you can look at it and you can disagree with my principles. I know a lot of people do, even though everything just comes from a purest place of just trying to, you know, do the right thing, be a good person, produce good professional wrestling shows, and entertain people. That's it at its most base level. That's it. Just want to be able to entertain people and give people a sense of escapism, right? And I don't really know where I'm going with this, but I guess that's my point. You know, like I just want to, you know, I feel like that I'm open to you know, growing this in whatever way possible, as long as it makes sense, and as long as we can do it in a way which is designed to grow what we're doing. And I always say I will do good business with anyone who wants to do good business, and good business works on both sides.
It's interesting, because one of the things I wanted to ask you about actually was in terms of expansion, because it feels to me, certainly over the last sort of like 1 to 2 years, Rev Pro's been very much expanding, particularly sort of into Europe. You've done shows in Spain, you've done shows in France, you've recently had the Double Impact shows with GWF in Berlin as well. There's other sort of venues you've gone to, like say Wolverhampton very recently is now sort of in that sort of regular rotation as well. I mean, have you found that as you've expanded, you found sort of like-minded promotions who've got like that sort of similar mentality to you, who you're like thinking, well, it makes good business to work for them. You get to see new talent that's out there, say as Azoya, for example, you know, people who get to come onto your radar. I mean, is that still like further expansion where it's possible and where it's sustainable? To use the phrase in there, is that still something that you're looking to go into 2020, late 2025 into 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, I think, like, to me, the goal is always to keep growing and to keep moving. I feel like it's very easy to get stagnant, and I feel like we've almost been forced to, like, just as an example, like, we've been forced into a change with our monthly London shows. We've lost 229 in the venue. We're moving to a venue called the Porchester Hall, and I feel like we were comfortable at the 229, and I'm petrified about going into a new venue. But it's a lot bigger venue than 229, and I said, look, if we can just transfer the same amount of fans across to the 229 to begin with, then that's great, right? But the analogy I've used, and I've done a couple of interviews, so apologies if you've heard this before, but the analogy I've used is I've just started gardening with my son, and he basically, one of the things you learn is, you know, a plant, you plant a plant in a pot, it's only going to grow as big as the pot that it's in. So obviously, if you want it to grow bigger, you've got to put it into a bigger pot. And that's kind of the way I see, you know, this transition to Porchester Hall is we're basically putting our show in a bigger pot, right? And then we're going to water that. We're going to water that show, and we're going to hope it grows and we can bring more people. But that's pushed me out my comfort zone. And it'll either be the making of us or the breaking of us, but I'm determined as always, and I'm, you know, even if it doesn't work at first, it's one of those things whereby I'm like, we will double down and we will work hard and we will make this happen. But that's like an example of growth which we've been forced into. So because because I always try to not be in my comfort zone, because I feel like if I was still in my comfort zone, I'd be running one show every other month from a tiny venue in Sittingbourne, Kent. Right. And I think that sometimes you've got to risk failure sometimes in order to succeed. And it's obviously the lessons on your way that then contribute to further growth. Right. And I say, like, when I used to run the shows in Sittingbourne, as an example, I used to run one of those shows. We used to run every, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks in Sittingbourne. We'd run one of those shows, and after that show, I'd be wiped out, exhausted for a full week afterwards. Like, I can't explain it to you. It'd be like I'd be drained. I'd just need to sleep. It would be like the world's longest hangover, right? Or as they call it when you get to my age, just a hangover, right?
It does get brutal, mate. I trust
right,
me.
Right. And yeah, my way of avoiding that is just I've just stopped drinking altogether now, because I just can't deal with it, right? I can't lose the days, right? So but yeah, where was I? So this is a problem of, you know, when you've got a mind like mine, which is racing all over the place, 100 miles an hour, and you're talking about something you're passionate about, it's hard to stay on track. The
expansion of movement. Yeah.
Right. It's new territories. So there's sometimes you're forced into those moments, right? But then the lessons I've learned in the past is every time that I've made those moves, right, it's only contributed to further growth. So when we went from IPW and I transitioned into Rev Pro, one of the first things in my mind was, I'll show him. Do you know what I mean? Right. So that forced me to be like, right, I'm going to go into new venues. Right. I'm going to go into York Hall. Right. And I was brave enough to do it because I almost had that thing to kind of push me over the edge. Right. So, and you do that first York Hall show, and then everything snowballs from there. Right. So I guess with the lessons I've learned, I'm constantly trying to evolve that. I'm constantly trying to find the next thing. And in answer to the question about going into the European cities, the reason I do that is just because I love wrestling, right? I love free holidays as well, but yeah, but like
always look like good weekends then.
Right, but yeah, that's why. Yeah, you may have noticed Barcelona's turned into a weekend in September. It was only one day before. But like,
good time to go.
It'll be Turkey next.
Yeah, well, I said to the guy, they were like, "Oh, for the next one," I was like, "What's the weather like when we get to a bit later in the year?" So I thought September, when it starts to get a bit colder in the UK, you know, maybe we can.
I'll have a word with set up in Thailand for November, mate. November, December.
Right, please do.
Good time to come
please
out.
do. But with those, like, the reason I do those is because I love wrestling. So the biggest thing for me was when we went to Barcelona, man, like, honestly, just the passion that the fans had. And again, look, this is all grassroots, right? And I see it and I'm like, I can help you guys grow. And the reason I can help you is because is exactly what I've grown from, right? But I look at it and I say they have got a team full of people in Barcelona that are able and willing to help, and I had to do it for all intents and purposes on my own, right?
Sure.
So when they've got that infrastructure, right, all they need is the knowledge. They need someone with the knowledge to help pass it on, and they need, and it's not just coming from me, it also needs to come from their guys as well. So I look at Zazaya, for example, with him, like, you know, look, he's been a revelation. We never would have found him if it wasn't for going to Barcelona, and the wrestling world wouldn't have found him if it wasn't for us going to Barcelona. So look at, and I like to think about our fingerprints all over the wrestling world, right? Just look where Zazaya's going to wind up in, you know, like look back at Zazaya's career, 5 years time, see where he is, and then think where he started. And look, talent always seems to find a way of rising to the top, right? But if you look in 5 years time where Zazaya is, right, wherever it may be in 5 years time, I guarantee you it's going to be the top of this business, right? And you think if he hadn't done the stuff with us, right, like, look, he'd still be a young man in 5 years time, right? But that process probably wouldn't even have started yet, right? Or he'll just be starting to break out, right? So we've been able to accelerate that process for him massively. But then with him, you know, what I said to him all the time is, listen, you go out and you work these guys, right? You go work Luke Jacobs, you work Mike Loku, right? You work the international talents, Hechicero, you know, Angel de Oro, everyone else he's worked at, you know, over the past, you know, 18 months. You work those guys, you take something, the most important part, your responsibility. You're now waving the flag of Spanish wrestling, right? But now everyone's going to look up to you. And the best I can liken it to is, you know, when I was growing up in the wrestling industry, everyone looked up to Doug Williams, right? And Doug Williams was the one. Oh, Doug Williams, Johnny Storm, Josie Fleisch. They were the ones that were teaching the lessons from their international travels to those coming through, right? They didn't have the benefit of learning off of anyone. They had to go out there and get that experience themselves, right? And the reason why this crop of wrestlers right now are the best they've ever been, and look, I'm not sitting here saying this crop of wrestlers now are the biggest draws, because obviously you look back to that, you know, 2015-16 era when British wrestlers were legitimate draws in a sense of you could announce a all British wrestling match and sell a lot of tickets, right? And look, I'd love to have those days back, but the fact is, almost a sign of the times, you have to do a lot more to get people's money now, right? And I think that is a reflection of where we're at in society right now anyway. So I'm not saying that you know, had COVID not happened, had NXT UK not happened, had Speaking Out not happened, I'm not saying that we wouldn't be exactly where we are right now, right? In fact, we'd probably be in a worse situation because a lot more people would have rested on their laurels and not, you know, given talent an opportunity to grow and whatever. But, you know, I've always made sure from a Rev Pro perspective that we've got that conveyor belt of talent coming through, right? But the reason why the level of wrestlers are so good now is because they're able to get real world experience. Like look at Will Ospreay. Look, I'm not taking credit for any of Will Ospreay's wrestling, but like what I say with Will is, and I used to say this to everyone, like Will would go in there. He's like a super, I don't not maybe a superhero, but like his superpower, right, is he was able to go into the ring with the best wrestlers in the world and steal a little bit of their power. Right, so he was able to learn lessons from AJ Styles, from Okada, from Omega, from Tanahashi, right, and even from, you know, your Zack Sabre Juniors, you know, and the, you know, the generation of British wrestlers that came before him, right. He was able to kind of, because really he was the next generation after your Zach, Marty, Haskins, you know, he was the next generation, right, after that. Right, so he was able to, you know, nick from, let's say nick, but you know, steal the superpower, steal the knowledge. You know, it's you know, they say you steal from one person, it's plagiarism. You steal from many, and it's research, right? And I feel like he was able to kind of, you know, get their superpowers, get their knowledge. He was a student of the game, and he worked so hard to apply all that information. You look at, you know, people could levy, the biggest criticism that people could levy at Will like years and years ago was he does too much or it doesn't mean something. And when you watch it, he always had a grasp. He always knew the psychology of professional wrestling, but now he's kind of got it down to a fine art, right? But now, right? So you imagine Will and all the people Will's been able to work with and pass that knowledge on to, right? So it's just all about, as we get further along, the generations of wrestler are going to get better and better because they're just learning from better people before them. They're learning from the mistakes of the people before them. I always say it's better to learn from other people's mistakes than it is your own, right? And of course, there's an element of finding stuff out from for yourself. But you know, there's stuff now which I will teach. I don't want to use the term teach, but I guess teach young wrestlers, right? Which 10 years ago, what I'm teaching them now, it would have been alien to me. It would have gone completely over my head. Right. So I'm able to give people lessons now and kind of help guide people with knowledge that, you know, no one would have had, because you have to develop it from experience. Right. So to be able to do that is just such a fine thing. And again, like when you look at the caliber of wrestlers who are coming over to the UK, you're getting to see wrestlers in their prime. And I always look at this. I say in 2013 we brought over Hiroshi Tanahashi when I think you can make the argument he was the best wrestler in the world. Right?
I was there, mate. That was a great day. Bret Hart as well.
Bret Hart as well. Yeah, absolutely. We had Bret Hart and Tanahashi in the ring together. That was my that was my moment. That was for me. And you know, look, when look, but I'll let you into this one. But when I booked Bret Hart, right? So obviously. I knew Tanahashi, I knew Tanahashi was about the business, right? Bret Hart was very much personal, right? And I looked at Bret Hart and I looked at the cost of Bret Hart, right? And I was like, if I had to spend this amount of money and I'd get £0 back through the door, but I could hang out with Bret Hart for a weekend, right? Would I do it, right? As a fan. And I was like, yeah, I think I would, right? So as a result, it became a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
Because it was just like, I'm going to recoup something, right? But like, worst case scenario, I'm going to get to spend the weekend with my hero, right? Yeah. Worst case scenario, it would be, I'm going to get to spend the weekend with my hero and my hero will absolutely hate me and not want to converse with me in the slightest. And I will be devastated and hurt and I'll become a Shawn Michaels guy. Do you know what I mean?
That is one of our questions later.
It is,
we know the answer.
but obviously, it worked out great, and that was it, you know. But like, you know, but we had Tanahashi when he was the best wrestler in the world. How, like, no generation of wrestlers from an independent wrestling level have had that opportunity to feed off of those individuals. Like Mercedes Moné right now is probably the next best example in terms of. I think you can make the argument she is without a doubt, male or female, one of the best wrestlers in the world, right? And she's one of the people who could give lessons on how to market oneself outside of the machine, right? And I'm sure it seems like I'm, you know, I'm kind of going over the top here, but I'm sure, like in years to come, people will be looking back and they'll be studying Mercedes Moné and they will be studying her route to success. Right. And I'd like it to the same way people could study, like, for example, an AJ Styles and his route to success, which was essentially you go out there and you make them want you, and then you get the bag at the end. You know, you can be an artist, you can be the guy, you can be, you know, looked upon as the best wrestler in the world. And then ultimately, when it comes down to it, you can still have a successul career in WWE, in the biggest promotions in the world, you know. And I think that he's a great person to look at as well. And I think there's all these, you know, great examples of people we can look towards as, you know, I used to always, when I was younger, you know, I always used to hear Jim Ross use the term, he's a student of the game. He's a student of the game. So like, my mentality was I need to be a student of the game, right? And I guess that's where all my reading and research and then whatever came into it. I was desperate to be a student of the game. But I highly encourage people to do that, and they look at examples of those people and kind of use that to grow.
Yeah, we're about to do a show on Sunday about AJ where we're doing like his whole career. It was the hardest thing in the world to like narrow those matches down, and going back and looking at like the stuff he was doing in the early 2000s when he was coming out to the UK and stuff, and he was making those towns. And it's no coincidence those types of wrestlers that were doing that were the ones that were that generation success stories, weren't they, at the time as well? Like it's all kind of tied together. And obviously, like you said there, iron sharpens iron, and everybody who got in with them, including Will, got better, didn't he? Like, so it's like, yeah, everybody wins.
Yeah, just invaluable experiences. And yeah, and I think AJ, and again, like you say, like it's the wrestlers that approach this differently are the ones that
Yeah.
always seem to rise to the top. And I mean, look, there's exceptions for rule, no doubt, right? But
Yeah.
if you look at, just for example, Cody, right?
Yeah.
If Cody hadn't left WWE and put in the work that he put in, then there's not a chance he'd be in this position in WWE.
Oh, no.
And look, I always say, like, Cody is one of the smartest minds in professional wrestling. I like to think, like, I've only worked with him a few times, but in the few times I did work with him, I really felt we were on a similar wavelength in terms of I always remember, like, his maybe a polarizing match, but like I always remember his Ring of Honor Championship match he had with Jay Lethal at Your Call. For me, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, right? And the reason I thought it was so fantastic is because we basically took a completely cold professional wrestling match in terms of, it was a Ring of Honor Championship match. No one expected the championship was going to change hands on a Rev Pro show, right? But if you watch that match and you watch the start of the match, and like it was everything about the match. So at the start of the match, I did a little speech where I was talking about how important the relationship was between Ring of Honor and Revolution Pro Wrestling. We've got the opportunity to make history tonight. Every single fan in attendance here tonight is a part of history because they're witnessing a Ring of Honor Championship defense in the same building that the Ring of Honor Championship became a world championship. And basically telling the people it's not without the realms of possibility that we are going to have a title change here tonight. And then we did the big in-ring introductions. And then they worked the match. And they worked a world championship match. And it was a deliberate pace, which picked up towards the end. And it had people biting on the near falls. And look, I know some people were just like, that was long, didn't enjoy it, right? But many people, including myself, were like, this is just fantastic. It's old school pro wrestling, right?
Yeah.
So, and I look at that moment, and I'm like, that's when I was like, Cody is on another level in terms of his mind for this stuff. And when I was talking to him about it beforehand, like obviously I'm sure he won't remember this at all, right? But when I was talking to him about it beforehand, it just seemed like we were on the same wavelength in what we were trying to achieve, right? And I was just like, you just totally get this, And even
he had the right attitude. Right,
and even the way he conducts himself in terms of making sure his rate was affordable, making sure he was there for the meet and greets, everything he did, right? And I want to say as well, it was during that time where Cody learned how to be an ambassador for professional wrestling, which he now is for WWE.
He uses,
and I think I make the argument that there's no one better suited to do media in WWE than Cody, and that includes the people who sit at the top of the pile, and I feel that like he would be. To me, if I'm running that company, I'd be much more comfortable sending Cody out to answer uncomfortable questions than anyone else in that.
He does
company.
a better job.
So absolutely,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, with someone like Cody, he's someone who's like, he came out with the right attitude and kind of the right idea of where to work as well. Because I think it goes both ways. Because we see people leave WWE, take the biggest money offer somewhere at some indie that's a family show in the US and does good numbers for that. I always call them scorched earth shows. Sells a load of foam fingers and there's a great business model in that, and then moves on, but doesn't realize that there are certain places you want to be seen. There's a certain place. Right. I think that's a good thing about Rev Pro. I think that's something to be proud of. That I think people know that that's a place. If they work Rev Pro, they have a good match where they'll get round. It's almost like I don't know whether it's tapping into a different fan base or it's tapping into the right fan base. It's tapping into a place where I guess the world is watching. I'm sure there are indies in the UK now who will still do great one-off attendances, who will do better attendances than maybe a Rev Pro show might do at a time, but it won't have that imprint. It won't have that world's eye on it.
So I think there's a few things to that. So yeah, there are shows that obviously do, like, obviously look, our top shows obviously do numbers which I don't think are comparable to any regular promotion in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like there are a lot of promotions that do one-off shows and do better numbers than Rev Pro. But I feel like some people look at that and they're like, well, but I just look at it and I say, look, Rev Pro's a premium product, right? Yeah. And a lot of those shows as well, you have to look at it and say, look, if you look at the gate of their shows and the gate versus the gate of our shows. So look, granted, we spend a lot more money than they do, right? But if you look at the gate of our shows, you know, our gate, like, you know, we could probably have like 200 people at our show, and the gate for 200 people would probably equate that of a gate for 600 people for lack of a better term, a family show, a happy clappy show, right? But like, so I think that obviously has to be taken into consideration as well. And like, obviously, look, could we? If there's sometimes you look at it and say, could we get more people through the door if we had the cheaper ticket prices?
Is the reverse true as well, though? Is it like other times where you're like, there's a guy I could book and it would probably get more people through the door, but it wouldn't fit what you're trying to sell with Rev Pro? You know what I mean? Just to pull an example out the sky, like let's say a Scotty Dupotty or something like that. You know, somebody like that who could. Do you have to consider that when you're thinking about it to keep Rev Pro that place?
So Scotty Too Hotty, just for reference, Scotty Too Hotty was the first ever import I independently bought over. Yeah. And that was back in 2008, 2007, 2008, something like that. And obviously we bought him over again with Rikishi and Brian Christopher years later. But I think there's a place for everything. There's a place for the nostalgia acts as well. And I feel like, look, full transparency, like the reason why, just for example, something like a Scotty Too Hotty, he's not wrestled for Rev Pro on recent tours. Like we have spoken to him about coming out for recent tours, but like, you know, dates or whatever hasn't worked out. And obviously a lot of the, I guess the hall shows run, you know, the smaller shows they run, you know, like the leisure center shows, and they can offer, you know, whatever he needs really. Whereas for us, he'd kind of come in and just be an act within the show. I do think there's definitely a place for people like that on our shows. Absolutely no doubt. I think a more recent example, biggest example I'd give would be Ryback. We used Ryback. And I was actually sad that Ryback, because obviously people always try and say bad things about Ryback. I can only judge people upon the way that I treat them, the way they treat me, sorry. I try to treat everyone well. But yeah, the way they treat me. And Ryback, when he came in, he worked so hard. He did his greatest hits. I've never seen a line for meet and greets like it in my life, right? But he was very much on the mindset of being that guy who's, you know, I made the judgment call with him, which was largely due to the venue we were running, was that, look, we can give him his payday. It wouldn't work as a sustainable regular. It was not a regular booking, right? Because you can only do it once, right? But honestly, he was so good, right? I genuinely believe if he'd approached stuff with the Cody mindset, I genuinely believe he'd be back in WWE right now or in AEW, right? Because I think there's a misconception that he doesn't know how to work, right? And you can look at it and say, well, maybe he's not as technically proficient. Maybe he can't do these, you know, he couldn't do a top end technical wrestling match, but he knows his strengths and he does what he does very, very well, right? It's like the equivalent of looking at Goldberg and being like, well, he doesn't know how to work, so we're not going to use him in a top promotion, right? But I think that obviously, I think Ryback probably could do more than Goldberg, right? I'm not saying he's been able to, he's not as proven as a draw as Goldberg, but there was a time when Ryback was super, super hot in the US, right? Super hot, right? And there was that crossroads where they booked themselves into the corner of that championship match with Punk, and it's either Ryback wins the belt or Ryback loses. And you have to look at it and say, did they make the right decision? And maybe they did, maybe they didn't, right? But things could have been so differently if they'd made a different decision that night, right? But I genuinely think that if he had that Cody mindset, he'd be in, you know, a top promotion right now, instead of being looked upon very differently by wrestling fans. And I think that's a shame, really. Because, and like I say, I think that's a shame. I just say, based on his dealings with me, because he was absolutely great with me, and he clearly knew what he was doing. He knew his character, and I was blown away by him. I really was, you know. So yeah, I think you know, when you look at these talents, it goes all manners of directions. And I wouldn't look at any talent and say, oh, they're not Rev Pro material, they're not a Rev Pro type talent. I look at it and I say, yes, we are a premium talent, but like, whereas for example, a Scotty Too Hotty might go on last for one of these local promotions, he might go on earlier in the card for us. Right. And he has another when he wrestles for us, he has a different role. We're trying to appeal to nostalgia and just having fun and not have a heavy, like just not have a heavy match on the show. Just a nice,
undercard
a nice
of your call, not the main event.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it can work. I genuinely do, because again, like I say, good wrestling is good wrestling, and good, like and I dare I say that probably no one's got their act down better than someone like a Scotty 2 Hotty.
Sure.
Yeah. You mentioned Ring of Honor before as well, and we have to mention, obviously, we have coming up, we've got the big 13th anniversary weekender. You're using the Ring of Honor name on the Global Wars marquee. Is that to tie in specifically with that, obviously the long history that you've had with Ring of Honor there as well? I mean, and do you feel like that is going to help in terms of like some of the cachet that you want to sort of to make people feel about Ring of Honor? Because I have to be honest, for us, Ring of Honor kind of exists somewhat in a vacuum these days, where it is it's on Honor Club. It's not necessarily like the most sort of overtly out there accessible product, but are you looking to tap into a lot more of the kind of like the history when using it as part of like Global Wars?
So to be honest, I'm just trying to sell more tickets, mate. But
you're cashing those Tony Khan checks. That's what it is. I heard a rumor AEW. I heard that today and nothing like
It's interesting, isn't it? But I can confirm we're getting no checks from anyone. And if anyone does want to write us a check, then please make it out to. You can make it out to Andy Quildan or Dynamic Wrestling Limited, whichever. I'll take either. Or
you're not moving house, mate. You're just buying houses, aren't you?
I can send you my PayPal, bank details, whatever you need. No. So look, I understand what you mean. By for a lot of, especially diehard Ring of Honor fans, it's not the same as it is. It's existing almost for the sake of existing. But I always think when you see the super shows or the PLEs or the pay-per-views or whatever they are, I always think they're great value for money, and I always really enjoy them, right? And I always feel like, to me, that's another case of, what I spoke about earlier, when I look at something and I'm like, oh, I wish I could, do you know what I mean? I wish I could get my hands on this. I wish I could, because I know, look, it's not, it's everything's done with pure intention, but Tony Khan is stretched so thin, and so I see that, and that's one of those, like I say, one of those examples of where I'm like, oh, I wish I could be involved. I wish I could, try and steer this ship and almost because I was a when I read the first Ring of Honor show, it just blew my mind about what professional wrestling could be, right? So yeah, but in terms of the anniversary show, so the way I termed it. So over the 13-year history of Revolution Pro Wrestling, the international partnerships have been such a big part of us, right? And obviously Ring of Honor have been a big part of that as well. And obviously to varying degrees across the years. I remember one time they forced me to book Bully Ray so he'd fulfill one of their dates in the contract. And that was a big mistake.
Be careful, he'll reply on his radio show. We might need to edit that out. We don't want to start a podcast war.
Well, I'm obviously doing it to try and get some attention. So, so we've always had a relationship with Ring of Honor. But again, I always say, the relationship with Ring of Honor was interesting throughout the years, and it was almost whenever it suits us type of relationship with Ring of Honor. But which I always thought, and again, I would always try to say, let's do more, because they were the closest thing to us, right? In terms of, from that independent level, but obviously they had a lot more money behind them. But yeah, so that's why so basically the idea behind the concept of Global Wars is to try and is to tip the hat, so to speak, to our international partnerships. Tony Khan had the idea for doing something on that weekend featuring the Ring of Honor brand, which obviously makes sense, and it made sense for me to do something like that along those lines, because look, I wanted to do my idea was to kind of do a versus the world type show anyway. Look, it was I had two minds, right? So there was always going to be the versus the world element to the weekend, right? So it was, but it probably would have been interspersed between the two nights, right? So you'd have some of the storyline stuff and some of the dream matches mixed across the two nights, right?
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I ultimately opted not to do that is because I hate the mindset of like for example, WrestleMania, right? And now it's across two nights. It's like you've got night one and night two, but night two's the proper WrestleMania. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
SummerSlam, night one and night two. Night two's the proper SummerSlam.
What's the real main event? It's the night two
What's
main
the
event.
real main
isn't it?
event, right? So what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to make any matches feel lesser than the other, right? And I thought we can differentiate these events here because again, because initial mindset was, oh, I don't even know what I was thinking. I was the initial mindset of when, but look, I want to stress we were forced to do 2 days. We had no choice but to do 2 days to be able to deliver something that people are something on par with what we've delivered the previous couple of years with our anniversary events, right? So you find yourself in that situation, like, right, we've got 2 nights. What is the best way to fill these 2 nights, right? Now, initially I was thinking, look, if you look at the anniversary, because it is crazy, because obviously, look, we've had like 10, 11 matches on the anniversary shows, maybe even 12 one year, the last couple of years, right? And I was like, oh, we can split it down so we can have like 6, 7 match cards. But here we are, and I found ourselves, I think we've got 10 matches on each night, right? Because of the level of what we're trying to achieve here, right? And it's once a year, come on, right?
Yeah.
But but what I was like is we can give the undercard matches more time and more story in terms of in the build up to it. But then you look at it realistically and you say, well, if we give this story more time, then it's going to take away from this story we're trying to tell. And then we've got our Great British Tag League. And then, do you know what I mean? And then it's like, so then it becomes even harder. And then it's like, anytime I get an opportunity to have a Mercedes Moné championship defense, I'll use it. So, it's like there's last year we had the same thing happen where MJF came along and was like, I would like to work Rev Pro. I'd like to work Michael Oku. Can we do something, right? And of course, I'm going to try and make it happen. But in doing that, we had a super show just weeks before the anniversary show, right? So again, like with the Mercedes thing, like I was anticipating the first time we'd use Mercedes after the April event would have been at the anniversary weekend. But when Mercedes is like, so pumped from the show and she's messages saying like, hey, when can we do another one? Like, when can we, like, let's make it happen, So we do that. And then obviously, again, we've got ourselves another super show, right? Or, or, I say super show, we've got the pressure to deliver, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so then that changes plans as well, right? So, and it's great to be able to do that because when we have those events that have got the eyeballs of the wrestling world talking, watching and the mouth talking, when we've got those opportunities, we will take them because they are huge opportunities for us because it's opportunities for growth, right? And it's opportunities to make those stories resonate further with people. And dare I say, there's going to be people who watched that Summer Sizzler show for Mercedes, right? Yeah. Who but the type of fans that watch it will be the type of fans that will tune in again for the anniversary, right? But now, because they've tuned in for that Mercedes match now they're going to have a greater appreciation of the understanding because they know Ricky Knight Jr., they know Michael Oku, and they know their story. They know where they're at heading into it, right? They know about the Great British Tag League. They know about so many of the stories that, came out of that and are going into the anniversary weekend. So it's really works. And like, that's one of the things about being an independent wrestling promoter. You just need to learn to be on your feet always, always on the pivot. You can always, I always say you take the words can't and won't and just change them to can and will. We find a way, right?
Is that kind of like the state of the AEW relationship? Is it a case of those opportunities come up, like you say, MJF or Mercedes, and you take them with both hands? Like, is there something more formal there, obviously, to address the daft rumors that are out there? Like, is there more you would hope from it as a relationship? Like, how would you categorize it?
Okay, so there's nothing formal at all, right? Many of the stuff happens. The show where Orange Cassidy wrestled, that came about 48 hours before. Tony Khan was in the UK. He called me and was like, "Hey, do you want to use Orange Cassidy on the show?" Right. We're in London. It would be cool to do something. Right, we want to check out Will's last match anyway. Do you want to do something? Absolutely, we'll make that work, right? Tony was then like, you know, he was like I say, like he was like, do you want to do something with a Ring of Honor name? And I was like, all of a sudden it makes sense because look, we're doing something. We're pretty much we're going to be using that talent anyway, right? So can we make more out of less, the same way we always do and have done throughout the years, right? And Global Wars is an event which is synonymous with Revolution Pro Wrestling. You look at all the dream matches, and like, you know, one of the criticisms that could have been levied at Revolution Pro Wrestling, however, if you were watching closely, it was completely false. But one of the criticisms was Rev Pro don't do storylines. Rev Pro are just about dream matches, right? That would be the thing that people would throw towards us. But like, number one, right, the reason why we would headline our York Hall show shows, or you know, have a great portion of our York Hall shows with dream matches, is because if we went in with a storylines, the same people that are moaning wouldn't have purchased a ticket in the first place, right?
Yeah.
But if you look up and down the show, everything we did, you know, we had storyline reasons for everything, right? And you look at stuff like, for example, you could look at when Matt Sydal did his trilogy with Will Ospreay, right? You could look at that and be like, that's a series of dream matches. But whilst it was a series of dream matches which had purpose and a story. Sydal won one, Will won one. Now Sydal's like, you got lucky with that one. You know, I need you to prove you can take my spot. I need you to beat me 2 out of 3 falls, and I need you to put your Cruiserweight Championship on the line. And I think for me, when I think back to Rev Pro moments and Rev Pro matches, that was one of the pivotal moments and pivotal matches that really stand out for me. And when you saw Will for the first time deliver in that storyline manner, you know, that underdog, the young pretender trying to take the crown, right? And that was absolutely fantastic. And every time I see Matt Sydal, I always thank him for that moment. I always say how important he was to Will's development and growth, and how much I appreciate him and what he did. Because you have to remember, when we did that, Matt Sydal was fresh out of WWE. It was, I think, one of his first matches outside of WWE was that first match with Will. And he went into it wanting to do business, you know, wanting to let's make a program out of this thing, you know, which is fine, is smart business, because obviously he's guaranteed himself future work, but he's also gone into it with the mindset of, we're going to make this kid, you know, I'm going to do everything in my power to help this kid, right? So yeah, I guess, like, going back to the Global Wars thing, like, we, you know, Global Wars, synonymous with Rev Pro, highlight of the calendar year for so many wrestling fans, and it gives us an excuse to do those dream matches without people having a go at us about, you know, well, you're not a storyline promotion. Well, look at night 2. It's filled with it, right?
It's kind of the criticism AEW gets, though, and that's the thing. Like, I think most of the people we hear are happy with the way Forbidden Door is this year. It feels more of an AEW show versus an AEW versus New Japan show. But if you've got a hankering for that and you want that, you can get that at Global Wars. You're delivering really to the spirit of what Forbidden Door weekend arguably is.
And I think as well, like, what I will say, just while I think about it, is I think one of our biggest downfalls was we weren't able to illustrate enough to the fans that don't attend week in, week out, that we do have storylines. We weren't able to kind of show people what those storylines were, which is something we've been working so hard on. And, like, obviously, look, everything we do, it takes time, right? But now we get after the shows, you get backstage reactions after the shows, which has worked so well, because obviously anyone who wants to go and look at them is you know, learning what's going on and whatever, right? But it gives the talent an opportunity to be creative, but it also gives the talent an opportunity to cut these promos. And if you look at the which is very rare that the talent gets the opportunity to do that on an independent level, and if you look at, or very rare they're able to do it and it not be off their own back, I should say, right? And if you look at the promos, if you look at that first set of backstage promos and you look at the most recent set of backstage promos, it's night and day to how much the wrestlers have progressed in terms of that type of storytelling. So that's one thing we do. We also do a Rev Pro recap, when in about 5 minutes you can watch a recap of, you know, this is what happened, you know, this is what happened at the last show, join us at the next show. At the start of every show, which we don't put on the internet, but it's on the start of our VODs, we do a previously on Rev Pro, which is in about 45 seconds. You can get some hooks as to what happened previously, right? And it might not be from the show before, it might be from a show 6 months ago, because my booking is very clever. It is very clever. It's layered, right? Dave the Mark, who writes a lot of stuff about Rev Pro, he does a great job of like stringing together stories and stuff. But one thing I saw him write, which I think is the most appropriate thing to describe the way we do things, is that Rev Pro, they don't do feuds, they do rivalries, right? So in a sense of, we will have what you would look at as a traditional wrestling feud. So, for example, Michael Oku and Ricky Knight Jr., it all started in 2020, right? Up until last year, they'd only had one professional wrestling match, singles match, against each other. They've now had 3, right? So they had one in October, and of course one in April. One in 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, 3 weeks ago. Very recently anyway. But people are like, oh, they've had hundreds of wrestling matches against each other. It's like, no, they haven't, right? We've established they hate each other, and we've established moments. So there was a moment when Ricky Knight Jr. walked over the fallen body of Michael Oku to get into the ring at the Rumble to eliminate Anthony Ogogo from the Revolution Rumble, right? There's been moments where, multiple times we've done Revolution tags where Michael Oku has eliminated Ricky Knight Jr. from behind, right? With the mindset being that Michael Oku's scared of Ricky Knight Jr., right? That's the story we've been painting throughout this time. Now, if you follow it and you follow it in depth, you'll get that greater fulfillment out of it, right? Or you could watch it from when it comes back around, it's almost like a feud. But like I say, it's not that feud because it's that rivalry. So Michael Oku and Leon Slater, that's like another one which has been bubbling under, and he's coming back, and he's coming back at the anniversary show. Luke Jacobs and JJ Gale, another example of a rivalry which will seemingly go forever, and I feel like it's almost like we don't forget. So it's like, you're not going to suddenly become best friends with someone. Like, if you hated someone last year, they might turn onto the same side that you're on, right? But it's like, for example, David Francisco is a heel to everyone, right? And David Francisco, I think David Francisco is a fascinating case study of Revolution Pro Wrestling and wrestling fans, right? And one thing I will say is, he has a lot of people who write horrible things about him on the internet, right? One thing I will say, which I find so interesting, if you look at the wrestlers that have horrible things written about them, many of them portray heels on our professional wrestling shows, right? And it's almost like they don't like them because they're heels, right? And they're traditional heels in the sense of, you're not going to find them at the merchandise table. You're not going to find them, pandering to fans. And they work as heels, right? And sometimes I feel like people are so desperate to be smart that they can't see that they dislike someone because they're actually a heel. They're actually pressing their buttons from a wrestling perspective that is making them boo them, right? And I look at that, and the reason I say this is because I look at the reactions that David gets, and I hate it as well, because you need to understand the character of David Francisco is the real life David Francisco, right? And I thought the real life David Francisco was a contender David Francisco. I'm not even, look, this isn't me trying to sell a storyline here. I promise you, this is 100%, right? I thought the David Francisco that was in the contenders division, which was tail between his legs, humble, just wanted to work hard and just wanted to work his way to the top, was real life David Francisco. It turns out David Francisco did not just have his tail between his legs, he had his tongue beneath his teeth as well, because he was biting his tongue, right? Because the second he left the contenders division, the real David Francisco came out, and he was, for lack of a better term, uncontrollable. He believes his own hype. He believes he is the centerpiece, or should be the centerpiece, of everything. The swagger that he walks with is very much real, right? And everything about him is kind of it's not, they say the best wrestling is wrestling which, where art imitates life, and I think that's what this David Francisco character is. But anyway, back to my original point with him, is he's recently turned to the side of good because of all the reactions he's been getting in Southampton, right? And also find it mental as well. Some fans, they really they're like, these Southampton shows, I can't watch them. Like, oh, just this, that, and the other, right? But David, like, the people who actually go to the Southampton shows, they for whatever reason they've taken him in as a cult hero, which has only grown the ego further, right? But you know, it's resonated, and there'll be times, and I hate to say this, there'll be times when our ticket sales aren't strong, and we'll announce David Francisco match, and all of a sudden the tickets sell, right? And I say the only metrics I can listen to are the live buildings and the VOD numbers, right? So he certainly ticks those boxes. But anyway, because of this this love that the fans have for him, which I never anticipated. Again, it's another example of having to be on your toes and change it up a little bit. He's got into this tag team with JJ Gale, and as both are so loved in Southampton, they've become the Sons of Southampton, right? SOS. Do you get it? Right. But like
Sheeran sort of eat your heart out.
So they're the Sons of Southampton, the two hometown boys, and David had to work to get JJ to trust him, and JJ's now trusting him. And then they go into this big Revolution tag in our last show at the 229, and David Francisco finds himself on the team of all the baby faces, right? And all the baby faces still fucking hate him, right? Because he's a prick, right? They see him for what he really is, right? So they all still hate him, but he's being a good guy in the match and saying, I'm not like you think I am, guys. And JJ's like, oh, he's not. And then when David does something egotistical, JJ's like, I'm sorry about him, guys. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, you know, JJ's not completely sold on him, but what they're doing is working. And do you know, so it's just like an interesting dynamic, right? And we don't forget what's happened before. We don't forget that Michael Oku and David Francisco don't get along with each other, you know? And that's never going to change unless something actually changes before our eyes, right? So I think that's very much, you know, with this the Rev Pro booking style, it's just layered. It's just you know, it's a lot deeper. Like, you could probably spend all night analyzing Revolution Pro Wrestling booking, and look, you might not come up with what I'm looking for in terms of, you know, because obviously I've got my vision and what we're trying to display, and the conclusion I'd like you to come to as wrestling fans, right? However, you can look at that and you can come up with your own conclusion. And if you come up with your own conclusion, that's perfectly fine, because all I want you to do is engage with the product, right? That's what art is, right? We can all look at a painting and come up with, you know, different meanings of a painting or different stories behind the painting. And that's fine, right? As long as you're thinking something, right? And that's what I think is so beautiful about pro wrestling. I think that something that I'm so proud of being able to achieve in Revolution Pro Wrestling is that we can create this discourse. We can create something whereby people actually want to spend time discussing it, good, bad, or other.
Yeah. I think as well, this actually ties back in when you mentioned all of that. That actually ties in with you watching soap operas, watching episodic TV, whereby you've got a large cast of characters and how they all interact with each other. Let's say Game of Thrones, for example. They don't suddenly change because now they're next to a goodie. They're not like they are still fundamentally the same person. And so you've just got a different dynamic then between them for which to do.
Right. And I just to give you an example of one of my proudest pieces of work, was that the Michael Oku and Connor Mills storyline. So before the pandemic, Connor Mills turned heel on Michael Oku, right? And we were going into, it was the Epic Encounter show at York Hall was going to be Connor Mills versus Michael Oku, best friends, bitter enemies, you know, story as old as time. The jealous best friend, you know, has turned villain on you know, his supposed mate, right? Now, this happened obviously at the start of it. So February 2020, I guess, was a turn. Obviously, the world shuts down in March of 2020. We get back to our Empty Arena tapings in August of 2020, right? And a lot has happened in the world at this point. And I thought one of the most important parts about our Empty Arena tapings is that the Rev Pro world. So there was nothing in it for me. I lost tons of money doing that, and just further added to our COVID debt, which I'm about, I think, about 7 months away from paying off now. Right.
Good work.
So it got us further and further into that COVID debt. Right. But I thought it was so important that the Rev Pro world kept turning. Right. And I thought it was important as well that what happened was, you know, we didn't shut down in March and then we pretended that these characters had no life. I always think it's funny in WWE when you've got people who've fallen out of each other and we have to presume they've not seen or spoken to each other Monday to Monday. They can only speak to each other
the
on
robots
TV.
that turn off.
Right, that's it, right? So my mentality is stuff happens outside of shows, right? And that's why when the COVID stuff happened, when we came back from lockdown, Michael Oku and Connor Mills were a team again, right? And we justified it with a simple sit-down promo where they both said, look, you know, Connor was like, look, I'm jealous. I was jealous of Michael Oku. I'll admit that, right? But when the world kind of is falling to pieces and stuff you used to take for granted, you don't take for granted anymore. Of course, you're going to fix stupid broken bridges, right? So now my focus is to get behind Michael. My focus is to, you know, show Michael like he can trust me and show Michael that, you know, that I'm sorry, right? And then Michael, the ever-loving babyface, of course he's going to say, I was heartbroken when my best friend, the guy that helped give me my start in professional wrestling, turned his back on me, right? Of course I'm going to listen to him. And of course, I'm going to take into the context of the world that we're living in right now, which is why I think it's so interesting how empty arena shows. Like, because I remember people going like, you keep harping on about the fact that the world's closed. You keep harping on about the fact it's empty arena. And it's like, yes, because it is, right? And when we look back at this, we want to remember the context of the world we're living in right now. So in 10 years' time, you could look back at that stuff and you're not like, what's going on here, right? Each show starts with a monologue about, you know, the world's fucked up. The place we're living in right now is crazy, you know. But the only thing that we still know is professional wrestling. So here we are doing professional wrestling. And that was the mentality behind it. And of course, that then just gave us more fuel to the fire because, of course, Connor Mills is still jealous of Michael Oku. And it only takes a matter of time before, you know, and I'm sure in the real world in general, right, even if his intentions are pure, right, at that time, as you know, when everything goes back to normal, what did it take? About 3-4 months before everyone started hating each other again? And we started taking everything for granted, right? So then it makes even more sense when Connor eventually turns on Michael, and it's even deeper, right? And I just feel like and because of the history they've got with each other, that, you know, it's a rivalry, so we can come back to it at any time, right? And I just think that that's one of the strengths of what we do. And look, I'm putting a petition here. Maybe is this a job application, or is this like a petition for Booker of the Year, or, you know, like I don't know, but like I'm just trying to, you know, just provide you a bit of method behind my madness and show you kind of what we do. And if you think about it like on that deeper level, sometimes I think it just blows your brain because you can talk about it, you can keep, you know, you can you know, you can pick things apart piece by piece and that's what it's designed to be able to do.
Is that something that's like sort of come into your thinking as well, particularly like thinking about like the upcoming anniversary shows and the global war show, that in terms of how is it compared setting these up and booking for them, obviously, in comparison to running like Wembley? Like,
so we had a couple of questions on that, didn't we? Like, people were kind of saying, like, you know, compare it to, it's like the Wembley weekends. Like, does it feel as big as those? Like, obviously, you guys are running. There are the other companies running as well. We've got a couple of questions for our patrons on that, and some clashing shows as well, which have unfortunately happened too. But like, yeah, does it feel as big a weekend to you this year?
So from our perspective, it does. But like, I was confident that we would have gone to the Copper Box this year if there was availability, right? Because I genuinely believe, so I look at it like this, right? So the first year was like 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium, right? And we drew 4,072 people, right? Last year there were 50,000 people at Wembley, right? And we drew, like, I think it was like something like 3,900 and something, right? Can't remember the exact figure, right? Now, that first year, our main event was Will Ospreay versus Shingo Takagi, right? It was a match which was designed to appeal to the hardcore smart wrestling fans, the traveling wrestling fans, right? Last year, our show was headlined by Michael Oku and Luke Jacobs, right? Which was a match which was designed to appeal to the Revolution Pro Wrestling audience, and me saying to those guys, I have faith in you to carry this as the main event of this show. And guys, you're going to be on a show which is going to be absolutely loaded, top to bottom. There's going to be crazy stuff on this show. There's going to be returns. There's going to be surprises. There's going to be craziness, right? But I know you have the capability to follow that. It's the most important match in Revolution Pro Wrestling, and therefore it's going on last, right? Now, we were able to basically get a very So I look at that and I say, despite the fact we were like just under 100 people down or whatever on the year before, of course, we don't have the fact going for us that it's the first year that Rev Pro's trying to attempt this. Let's buy a ticket and hope they fail so we can be a part of the horror show as well, right? Because it works both ways. Do you know what I mean? Like some people got that morbid curiosity about it, and there is a curiosity about what would Rev Pro look like in an arena setting, right?
Yeah.
So we lost that, the first year bounce, so to speak, right? And we were able to achieve that with, the same notice. I think that is a testament to the level of the first year's show, as well as the work we did to build that show to get there, right? So, and my mentality was, look, the fans, say the extra 30,000 fans which were at Wembley the first year, right? They're probably not the fans that we're drawing from anyway, because they're probably the people who, again, the curious fans, the morbid curiosity fans, the first time bounce fans, right? So for us to try and get that number of people out of still 50,000, like I thought we could achieve that. And the same way I feel like, look, let's face it, if there's 20,000 people at the O2, those 20,000 people are probably the most captive audience for something that we are going to produce, which is why I felt we could have still gone to the arena and we could have still delivered similar numbers year on year. I feel like there's obviously, do I feel it's bigger? I feel like fans aren't giving it as much. Maybe the fans aren't. Mate, look, I feel like we're in a situation where the week before, right? And I feel like next week is when people are going to start getting excited, because I feel like that's when anticipation for anything builds, right? I tell you what, that first year at the Copperbox, I've never had on the day ticket sales like I've had on that day, right? So I want to say, look, we were probably on about 3,500 tickets going into that show on the day of a show, right? Now, I remember I went to the toilet for my morning poo, right? Maybe too much information, right?
That's all we talk about.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I came out the toilet, and maybe it was a long poo. I don't know. Maybe I was scrolling on my phone or something. I don't know, right? Maybe I was daydreaming or just trying to prepare myself for the day ahead. But I came out the toilet and I sold 100 tickets, right?
Wow.
And then as the day went, the tickets were just, and it was individual tickets, right? But it was just like boom, 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 just to the extent that I couldn't keep up with the sales, because it wasn't like one of those on sales. So you sometimes you go on sale, you might sell 500 tickets off the bat, but you can do that in 10 minutes, right? So it's just like boom, all in one go and you're done, right?
Yeah.
But if you can imagine selling 500 tickets out over the course of like say 7 hours, right?
Yeah.
It's quite a thing, right? When it's just coming in.
And these notifications on your phone, because I've got to say, I get that endorphin when I get a tweet reply, so I can only imagine what it felt like getting that many.
So when it's a PayPal ticket, we get the notification, and but when it goes through via Stripe, we don't get the notification, right? But it was almost like I had to go and get another charger for my phone, because I had to get like a portable phone charger, because my phone couldn't keep up with the chaos, right? So that was the kind of level that was at, right? So hopefully we get some more of that next week. But obviously, look, it's different to before, but I do feel there's that same sense of excitement. I think that obviously doing the Global Wars show, I think it made life difficult for myself, because obviously you're kind of having to wait for certain pieces to fall into place before you can get stuff announced, before you can confirm stuff, and like it's like it's kind of difficult, and I kind of set the card up in a way that I always had a strong spine. So basically, if everything fell through at the last minute, we'd always wind up fine, right? I always say, just relax. I know what I'm doing. Just calm down, right? And like everyone, that's my new phrase. As a football manager, I wish I knew his name, but like he got a hell of a promo where he's basically just like, just I know what I'm doing basically, and just concentrate, get behind the team. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't concentrate on the negativity. Like, get behind the team. But it's so
Trust
good.
the process.
That's it.
I
Trust the
think I've heard that one.
process. Yeah. So yeah, and I feel like as we're, I saw like people moaning about stuff, and then like, we announce stuff, and like people go from like Rev Pro's or dirt worst, like, why haven't you announced stuff, to, oh my god, this is going to be great, right? And like, of course we want to announce stuff earlier, but there's obviously reasons behind everything, and many times what I say is we can play a game of would you rather, right? So it's like, we can be patient, we can wait, we can trust the process, right? And we can get what I know you would really, really like in the end, right? Or we can appease you right this second, right now, right? And then you can be like, well, the matches are announced, but it's not worth the money, right? Or the matches are announced and I'm just not feeling it, or however you want to term it, right? So I just think it's just important. Like I say, like, I feel like we should have, by this stage, enough good credit to know that we hit far often than we miss, right? And look, we're not going to get it right every time. We're not going to get it right 100% of the time. But like, I've been doing this long enough now to trust my gut instinct to know when we're doing stuff right. And basically it's almost like you have to hold your nerve, right? Because it's very hard. And that's why a long time ago, I stopped reading social media, basically around the time people start being horrible about me. There's been many instances, but like, I think, it was, we've had our controversies throughout the times, where I get blamed for stuff which is completely out of my control and nothing to do with me. And, it seems to be a fun habit, like, pile in on me, right?
Yeah, main character of the week stuff.
And like, I'm just, and I feel like I had to get a thick skin when that stuff was going on. But then like, I've kind of, and look, every now and again, I wind up, I can't help myself, right? I'll be like, let's have a little search then. Let's see what they're saying, right?
We all do it. I search GRAPPL every day.
But I tell you what, like, I'm probably worse than most, right? So I'll give you a secret, right? So there's a lot of people I mute, right? So when they're just constant negativity, again, no worries with constructive criticism, right? But I'll mute them, right? And then like someone like maybe like, so I like Craig reads my reads social media so I don't have to, basically. He's a filter and he will tell me stuff which is constructive, and he won't bother telling me stuff where it's just like slagging it off or whatever. But he might be like, oh, so-and-so's asking this question and like you're not replying to them. They get more and more agitated. I'll search for tweets, like the person's muted, right? So I can't see what they're saying. So I can't answer their question. So they've lost the privilege to having their questions answered, right? Because they've obviously been a dick in their social media usage, right? But I have to mute them. So like, because it doesn't matter how much you try to avoid it. Like, you'll log on and like Twitter's mental algorithm will bring their tweets to the fore, right? So so one of those people who are overly negative. And again, I want to once again stress, I have nothing against people who go to a Rev Pro show, don't enjoy it, and say, I didn't enjoy that show for reasons X, Y, Z, right? But it's the people that then go to the shows and or don't go to the shows in some instances, and they just jump on anything. They look for any excuse to not be happy. And I'm just like, I always say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if I spent my life just wrapped up in the negativity, then that's the type of person I'd be, and I'd be quite miserable all the time. So I just find like, I don't know where we got to or how we got to this. How did we get to this, please? Twitter.
That's what he does to you. Yeah.
I know, right? I know, but like I said, I mute. Oh, okay. So like in terms of reception to the shows and whatever, right? So I do mute a lot of it, and like a lot of it as well. Like I say, like I'm not sat there getting super pumped when people are writing good things either, which I really appreciate. But the reason I do that is because, look, again, like it goes back to what I was saying at the start of this about being in the bubble, right? And I feel like you can't sit there. So if I'm looking at Twitter as my means of gauging if something's popular or not, right? If I don't want to listen to the negativity that's coming from there, I equally can't listen to the over positive stuff
Sure.
either, because I think it just makes
Yeah.
you a hypocrite, right? Because you could easily shut yourself up off to any negativity and only concentrate on the positives, right? And of course, when I run a show, I look at, and again, my mute function is pretty good because it means that I can get a fair gauge from Twitter about, you know, what people genuinely thought about the show. Because again, I want to stress, I never mute anyone who's not overly negative, but I get, you know, just people moaning for the sake of moaning. So so it's difficult to gauge, but like I say, it's like with these shows and the build and whatever, like I say, I'd love to be able to just have people right now just say no, that look, Rev Pro's running an anniversary show, or Rev Pro's coming to the Doncaster Dome, Rev Pro's coming to York Hall. Let's trust them. Let's get that ticket, right? And I'm not saying this specifically about the Doncaster Dome. Oh, sorry, specifically about the Crystal Palace National Sports Centre. It's right behind you, JP. Great work. Yeah, I'm not saying it specifically about that show, but there are shows whereby you do have to sell some tickets in order to spend more money, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to look at it from a sustainable business sense, right? And there are some people who just, and again, like life has changed. Like we get far more people buy last minute tickets than we've ever had before, right? And when that trend started happening, I was having panic attacks, right? Where I'd be like, this is going to be a disaster. And like even driving to a show, I'd be like, this is terrible. And when we get to the show, and again, look, the metrics are different, obviously, judging on the size of a building, right? But I might be like, this is terrible. We'd get to a building, by the time we've driven a 3-4 hour drive or whatever, we've sold another 50 tickets, right? Which doesn't sound like a lot when you're looking at it in context of like a Crystal Palace, but when you're looking at it in the context of like a 229 or a Network Sheffield or HMV Empire, it makes a huge difference, right? But like now, people wait so late to buy their tickets, it makes it very hard to gauge. And then you have to play this game of like, you know, again, looking at sustainable business, right? What can we afford to spend on this show? You know, so these are the eternal problems of a promoter. But like obviously, when we go into the anniversary show, we go into a show like that, we go into Doncaster Dome, we go into York Hall, Wolverhampton, whatever. Then fact is, we are going all out because we are not gonna, you know, we're not gonna hold back, and we never hold back in our shows anyway. And I think like I say, like it's not all down to the name on the marquee as to whether you should come to the show. It's down to the stories we're telling, the effort that's put in by the guys, and whatever have you. And look, it's your money, it's hard-earned money. You can choose to spend it however you want, right? But I genuinely believe that if you spend your money on a Revolution Pro Wrestling show, you can rest assured you're gonna get value for money. You're gonna get your money's worth. Like, and again, another one from the moaning lot as well. Here's just an example for you, right? The tickets to this show are so expensive. I'm not paying £150 to go to a Rev Pro show. And it's like, okay, well, look, should we break this down, right? We've got 48 tickets, which are £150, right? They are front row tickets, right? They are sold out. Therefore, there are people who will pay that money to sit in front row, and people who see value for money for that to play front row. Now, if you want to get in the building, you can for 25 quid. Do you know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
And obviously every show's different. It might be slightly, someone's going to pull it up and be like, it's actually $27.50 for the anniversary, whatever, right? I don't actually know what the price is, but like we always make sure there's an entry price ticket which is affordable to everyone, right? Yet people will choose to ignore that and be like, I'm not going to that show because the ticket's too expensive, whatever have you, right? Some people don't have an entry price ticket. Some people don't, you know, think about that, but I always do because of the background that I came from and the fact that I know my family wouldn't have been able to afford a ticket, right?
Sure.
So that's why I always make sure there's entry level tickets. It doesn't matter what show it is. It doesn't matter what the venue it is. It doesn't matter, what names are on the show, right? We always make sure we make it as affordable as possible. And when I say we make it as affordable as possible, we have to do maths. We have to look at it and say, how much can we afford to do? Because again, the end goal is being alive to run another show tomorrow, right? Yeah. And that's what we need to be able to keep doing. So it's that constant juggling game that we're playing.
Yeah. Which kind of neatly lines up with a couple of questions that we had. These are from our Discord in there as well. There's two of them. I'm going to kind of like merge them together effectively. But it's relating to sort of around All In, where last year there wasn't clashes with the shows, and this year that there are clashes. From your perspective, I mean, is there are the relationships dynamics changed, or is this just a consequence of venue issues? Your Rev Pro expanding. Are these conversations that you have with other promoters, and has that cooperation between sort of British promotions changed in that time?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question. So we'll name names because obviously you're, I guess there's no point in kind of beating around the bush about where there are clashes. But obviously, look, we clash on the Friday night. We clash with Riot Cabaret. Of course, which again is interesting because the narrative is Rev Pro have deliberately clashed with Riot Cabaret, and then on night two, it's like we clash with Pro Wrestling Eve, and the narrative isn't Pro Wrestling Eve clash with Rev Pro because Rev Pro had the date announced first, right? But that's what I mean. It's different levels of criticism, and for whatever reason, I'm a punching bag for a lot of people, right? And it's easy to target myself. It's easy to target Rev Pro. I think some of it might be the perception that Rev Pro is bigger than the other promotions and therefore bullying other promotions, whatever. But I can guarantee you the other promotions have got more people working behind the scenes than I have. I can guarantee you that those promotions have got more resources than I have, and any resources which I've created have come purely from working my ass off to create those resources, right? So I feel like it's almost unfair in that level, in terms of not trying to judge us all on a similar ground. And one of the big things I said, if you've seen the Revolution, How to Start a Revolution documentary that Graps on Film made last year, one of the first things I said is like, I read somewhere that people said, can we even consider to be Rev Pro in India anymore, right? I'm just like, well, what do you mean? Like, we couldn't be more independent if we tried, right? And I think that there's obviously that misconception as well that we are not an independent promotion. It's like, yeah, we are one guy working very, very hard, right? To kind of try and make the impossible possible, right? But in regards to kind of how it all came about, like regarding the Friday scheduling, so I alluded to earlier, we wanted to, like, in an ideal world, would only be running Saturday night, right? Now, look, first of all, I want to stress, like, I believe there's enough wrestling fans in the area that I don't think it's going to damage anyone's product by running a show that clashes with another show. Right now, I understand there's frustration from the wrestling fans' point of view where a choice has to be made, right? And obviously, it's not ideal, right? But again, I think maybe this goes back to, what I was saying about the announcements in the previous question. It's like, what would you rather have, right? Would you rather us deliver shows the caliber of the shows we're delivering, right? Or would you rather us do one show? And if we're going to go London, right? Would you rather us go to York Hall, Bethnal Green, where a lot of people go, yeah, we would, but look, economically at York Hall, Bethnal Green on a standard York Hall show, it is almost impossible to make money, right? Due to the level of requirements. So like when I started off, you needed to have 12 members of security. It then went up to 18. It's now gone up. Sorry, it then went up to 16. It's now gone up to 18, right? Those security members' rates have gone up massively, right? You run a show on a Sunday, you're paying, like, I don't know if it's time and a half or double, whatever it is, but like, obviously, bank holiday weekend, you've got to look at it and be like, it's bank holiday weekend, we're charging more money, right? Then the production costs. Okay, look, the production costs are more expensive running Crystal Palace, right? But it's nowhere, like, if you look at your call to Crystal Palace, the production costs, it's not even like to do 2 nights at Crystal Palace production wise versus 1 night at York Hall. It's not a million miles from each other at all because of numerous reasons, right? Because when you hire something, you're technically hiring it for weekends. So all you're doing is you're paying the extra money. They're taking it up, putting it up and taking it down the same amount of time. So really, you're paying for the extra money comes into the manpower and hotels for the crew to stay and whatever, right? So when you look at it, the economics of professional wrestling, to be able to run shows the sizes of the shows we're doing, we had to run 2 nights, right? And then you can look at it and like it's been no secret. We moved that Mercedes show that we did just the Summer Sizzler show that happened at Wolverhampton because we were priced out of London. it just wasn't financially viable to run the event in London. And I look at it and say, if we run it in London, we might have got a few more people in London as well, right? But the few more people we get in London, it wouldn't equate to the extra money that we have to spend to make it happen. And like when you're put in a situation where, you know, my first and foremost is being a sustainable wrestling promotion, and you go from an event which, quite frankly, being the biggest events of the year, has the potential to essentially cushion us against any losses for the next 6 months, right? Versus running a show whereby, like, because look, so now we've got, what we've done is we've gone from it. So we've taken our capacity from, say, 1,200 people at your call, right, on one night to a potential 5,000 people across 2 nights. Right now, whether or not we'll achieve that, I don't know. Right, but we sold over 1,000 tickets on the first night. We sold over 1,500 tickets, maybe like coming up to 2,000 tickets on the second night. I've not done the maths, but like, you know, we are shifting tickets, right? So you look at that and you say you have to make a decision, right? And you have to make a logical decision. Then yes, you know, unfortunately, we kind of have to do that for the sustainability of the business, right? So it's unfortunate, right? And I know that I met with Riot Cabaret guys at, for example, at one of these shows. I think maybe after the last year's Wembley Stadium show, I met the Riot Cabaret guys, and they're lovely guys. We had a picture taken together, you know, and real good guys, real, like, you know, they're in wrestling for the right reasons. They've got good intentions about professional wrestling, and I love people like that, right? I've not maliciously gone into something to try and ruin them. If you look at their ticket sales, they've got limited tickets left, right? So if they've got limited tickets left and we've sold 1,000 tickets, right? I imagine come bell time, right, Cabaret is going to be sold out, and you know, we'll have like we'll have an attendance of far beyond what we could fit into York Hall. So I look at that and say, you know, the only negative I can see is that wrestling fans have to make a choice. Right, and if it's affected anyone, it's affected us, because those fans may well have come to the extra room that we've got on our night, right? So it's regrettable, and we would, if we didn't have to do this, we wouldn't do this, right? And regarding the sort of with the Eve show as well, you know, look, I spoke to Dan months ago about running Crystal Palace in the afternoon, right? And because I felt like, you know, we bring out all the fans, like I would really like to have made it a destination venue for the weekend and whatever. And I was a bit crap, and he was a bit crap in the terms of like the communication on it. But like, I'd sent him through, he was like, I need to know what it costs. And I sent him through the cost of security, and he replied being like, is that just security? Like, as in, like, is that just the cost of security, the security alone, right? You know, like, I'm really going to need to know what the whole thing is. And I looked at it and I was just like, you have to understand, right? I was, I deal with, like, I'm spinning plates constantly, right? And I could see from that message alone, right? I'm not into a negotiation about bartering down costs, because the cost of security during your show is the cost of security during your show. I'm already trying to offer you something whereby I'm saying, look, you've got all the production, you've got the ring, you've got, do you know what I mean? Like, everything's there for you. You've got over 1,000 tickets. At this point, there was like over 1,000 tickets sold on that night. So you've got a captive audience of that many people who we will send emails out to and whatever, right? And I look at it and I say, you know, like, I'm not in a position where I can negotiate and barter, and I didn't reply to that message. So that's on me. That's entirely on me, right? But he didn't follow it up either, right? But I was just like, of the mindset of, we're not in the, like, I don't have the time to be in a negotiation about something which is good for everyone, right? And if you really wanted to do it, we'd make it happen, right?
Sure. And
then obviously when the Eve show got announced, I didn't know it was going to be announced, and it put the girls in an awkward situation that had taken my date, and then, you know, and then now had to, you know, be like, oh, well, we work for even whatever. So, and I looked at it and it was like, you know, the exact same times. And it was like one of those things where I was like, if you just made your show 1 hour later, we could made our show 1 hour earlier. And then at the very least, there wouldn't be an issue with, you know, the girls appearing on both shows, and you wouldn't create that issue for them. So as it pertains, like, I've kind of done what I can. I'm starting my show a little bit earlier than I'd planned. in order to make sure that the girls can work my show and then go on to work Eve afterwards. And that's, you know, that's without communication. You know, like I got a message from Dan saying, like, can you jump on a call to kind of discuss, because we don't want to put the girls in an awkward situation. Maybe you can put them on night 1 instead of night 2. And I was like, well, you've already put them in an awkward situation by, you know, by putting our shows at the exact same time. And I put forward the idea of, you know, you move your show back, especially considering most Pro Wrestling Eve shows start at like 8 p.m. or something. This is like the first one. And look, don't get me wrong, he may well have his reasons why he's had to do it for business, in terms of, you know, making the show the right time, right? He may have to have, you know, the venue might not be available later on. There might be reasons behind him running his show earlier than any other show he's ever run at that venue. You know, maybe there is a business reason behind it, right? And I'm not sat here being negative on that, because business is business, right?
Sure.
And ultimately, like, I'm not negative on Dan for making a decision to benefit his business, right?
Yeah.
So what I get frustrated about is when I'm the bad guy in the situation and people are making out like I'm trying to run people off, or I'm trying to, you know, big brother people or whatever have you, you know, when all I'm focused on is Rev Pro and the business of Revolution Pro Wrestling. And look, I will say it straight up right here. We are working so hard to confirm one night for the anniversary next year, right? Because I would much rather have one night than two, right? And I would much rather have that one big show. And I had the option when we did when we did the Copper Box shows, I had the option to run smaller venues. And look, I want to put it in perspective for you. When we do this thing, right? So look, I had on hold, I had Copper Box, so last year, Copper Box, York Hall, 229, and Crystal Palace, right? Because my mentality was we need to make sure we've got something, right?
Yeah.
And I had ideas of, look, if I do get forced to do York Hall, maybe we could take 229 and make that a venue for one full day of pro wrestling as well. Or do you know what I mean? Like, just how can we make the most of these situations? How can we innovate? How can we, again, take that can't and won't to can and will with that mentality, right? Because you could look at it and say, that won't work, but like, we need to find answers, right? And that's what we try to do with this situation. So I don't begrudgingly look at anyone who's doing stuff. As well, the latest thing was like AEW have announced like your first chance to buy merchandise and to get pictures with people, and people are like, why is AEW clashing with Rev Pro? And it's like, there's enough wrestling fans to go around, right? And if you'd rather have a first chance to buy the latest Will Ospreay t-shirt that you can buy 24 hours later, right? Yeah. Then you're obviously not going to come to a Rev Pro show, because you're obviously, you know, that's your fandom is AEW, and it doesn't stretch beyond that.
It's like WrestleMania weekend, isn't it? The people going to WrestleCon aren't necessarily going to GCW, you know. And that's what we want. We want our WrestleMania weekend, and these are the positives and the negatives that come with that, aren't they?
Yeah. So let's give people reasons. Let's give people reasons to come to the shows. And it's like, the example is, look, so the first year Progress ran against us in the first year, right? And it didn't work out for them, right? But because of that, they moved their show to the Monday, which they've used, and they're doing the Monday this year as well, right? Yeah. And I just, and again, look, when they were running against us, it wasn't like a case of angry words with Progress, right? It was just a case of they're doing what is best for their business on that day, and they might look at it and say, well, this is the day we can secure talent. This is the day we can get, you know, AEW. I think they had QT Marshall on the show, and maybe some other people, right, but they were like, maybe they were just like, you know, this is the day we can guarantee, you know, some AEW talent, right? So this is where we want to run our show, right? And again, look, I could look at it and say, would I get, you know, say they got like, I don't know, however many hundred into the ballroom, would that exact same amount of people come to the Copper Box? Probably not. Would like maybe 20% of them come to the Copper Box? Probably, right? But at the end of the day, if the alternative is Progress not getting to run their show, you know, do you know what I mean? You have to take, you know, you have to kind of just look at it and say, like, we're not privy to that information. And like you say, like, we want this to be a a destination weekend for wrestling fans in the United Kingdom. We want everyone in the UK to, like, not just we want people in Europe, we want people from around the world to say, we want to come to the UK. We want this to be a WrestleMania weekend, right? And I would love it if there was, like, you know, even if there was like a For the Love of Wrestling or something, you know, at the XL or something like that, you know. I would love it if, you know, and if there was more Q&As, more meet and greets, you know, more wrestlers thinking they're pop stars, whatever, you know, like like anything to kind of make it this a destination weekend where, you know, if you're a wrestling fan, you're buying a ticket to London, right? You're gonna get there on Thursday, you're gonna go home on Tuesday, right? And you're going to have a ticket, you're going to be in London, right? And you're going to figure it out. Like most of it, if you speak to the guys in America with the WrestleCon weekend, they sell most of their tickets on the week of the event because people just get into town. And when they get into town, then they decide what they're going to do. They wait and see, they see what you know, obviously you get some people who come straight away, like, who's just like, oh, I need to go to a Rev Pro show, I need to go to a Progress show, whatever. But, like, you know, you get those people, but then the ones that, you know, make up the numbers, those 100 people that purchased tickets while I was doing my poo, right? They're the people. That's a callback. That's a good comic technique there.
Professional podcaster.
But they're the people who will get into town and they will decide when they're in town, like, oh, we've got, you know, Rev Pro going on at this time, we've got Progress going on at this time, we've got Riot Cabaret, we've got an autograph signing, and then they will make their decision based on that. And there's such a thing as being wrestlinged out as well, you know, like, you like I see, you could see like some people just much rather, like, oh, I go to an autograph signing and then I go to a wrestling show, right? I saw, oh my God, I saw like Michael Oku and Luke Jacobs at that Progress show at WrestleMania going on at like 2 in the morning or something. Like, you know, just, they got them in the end, but my God, the work they had to put in to kind of get, you know, but it's just because, you know, obviously it's super
you feel
late,
that at home watching it at 6 in the morning on the stream. It's, I can only imagine what it's like for them.
And you've got so many people, like, you know, who've done a whole day of autograph signing and wrestling shows, and here they are at 2 o'clock in the morning still sitting and watching wrestling. It's a chore, isn't it? Right? So basically what I'm saying is I would like to get the fans to that level of exhausted because of all the activities that we have going on. And so I feel like that's what this weekend should be in vain of. And look, can we do better to avoid clashing with each other? Absolutely we can. But will clashes be unavoidable in certain circumstances? Absolutely they will. And again, we have to hark back to, ultimately, this is a business, but if everyone does well that weekend and everyone does, you know, everyone has like great shows, right? And again, look, there's people who will go to Riot Cabaret who will catch our show on demand afterwards, right? And you know, and I'm sure vice versa, you know, and I just feel like it's just a case of, you know, like I had to go, I did that FWA podcast with Andy Quildan was on here. I had to have a go at him because, you know, he's going to Riot Cabaret on the Friday and not Rev Pro. But, but he was saying that, like, obviously, he was just like, we just wanted to do something different on the Friday. Like, do you know what I mean? So, like, there's two different experiences of different wrestling shows. And I think that's perfectly valid, right? So, and you look at that and you say, like, will, you know, the people who go to Riot Cabaret on the Friday and then come to Rev Pro on the Saturday, they'll come to it fresh, you know? And the vice versa, people who come on the Friday and then go to Eve on the Saturday, you know? Like, it just is what it is, basically. And I feel like all I can do is my job as a promoter is not to be talking about stuff like this. My job as a promoter is to be, you know, letting you know what we've coming up, what we've got coming up on our shows and how exciting it is and how I believe, and I'm a little bit biased, I will admit, but I believe my shows are can't miss shows, right? And I feel that come the end of the weekend, like our goal every weekend, every all-in weekend, our goal is to have the most talked about matches on those weekends, and that includes the AEW show at the end, right? And because of that, everyone ups their game, right? And I hope that makes all the other shows do the same as well, because again, like I say, you know, if we can turn this weekend, let's forget about the stupid squabbling and let's forget about trying to look for stories and arguments that aren't there, right? And let's concentrate on the fact that, you know, if everyone gets their shit together and everyone puts on these massive shows, then we will become the envy of the wrestling world and we will make it bigger. And we make it bigger. Like I said to you, I alluded to earlier, like a successful Copperbox show for us could cushion 6 months of pro wrestling at its best, right? In terms of you know, maybe we can afford to lose money on a show. So that means we can make a decision to spend a little bit more on production. Or look, I've speculatively spent some more money on production going into this show, right? So what we did, what we've done in previous years is we do the big show and then we look to reinvest some of that money into production, right? So, for example, anyone who watches our shows hopefully will have noticed the cameras have improved massively, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, people still like to say they're rubbish. They are top end cameras, right? And I look at it and I'm like, to me, it looks good, right? And I think that a lot of people who are slagging it off just aren't watching it. An example I will give you is the first show that we used these new cameras at is one of the Stevenage shows. And someone tweeted about Rev Pro's crappy cameras, right? And this is the day we're debuting these brand new top of the range cameras, right? And they tweeted saying, you know, Rev Pro's crappy cameras, and they'd been very vocal about negatively on the muted pile, by the way, now, right? But they'd tweeted very vocally about the Rev Pro production, and every time they tweeted, it got a lot of engagement. So it became a thing of like, oh, let's throw a dig in at the Rev Pro production, and then, do you know what I mean? There's more engagement.
Becomes shit, people say, don't it? Yeah.
And I think I can qualify this argument as well, because there was that show, and like you could say, was that person watching on demand and their stream wasn't up to scratch or whatever, or was that person sat in the audience tweeting so they couldn't possibly be sat at home watching it on demand to see that we've got new cameras, to see that the quality of cameras has improved? So do you know what I mean? That's an example of it, right? But that happened, that was after our so August shows last year, so whatever the Stevenage show was after that, we'd invested in these new cameras. But like, we've consistently invested in production, but again, we're doing it bit by bit. There's one person literally put on Twitter a list of stuff like, how can Rev Pro not get this right? Here's a list of stuff they need, right? Here's the venue. So it'd be like Crystal Palace National Sports Centre, right? And then it'd be like, here's a link to a place where they can hire the equipment. And it's like, Crystal Palace video hire, right? And they're like, this is what they need, right? And I'm just looking at it and I'm just like, do you have a clue about what you're talking about, right? Yes, we could hire this equipment every show. And yes, but we run 50 shows per year, right? Plus, right? So if we hire this equipment 50 times a year, right? And we are going to go bankrupt, right? So it's like, we have to do it sustainably. So we have to buy the equipment, right? But the equipment's very expensive. So we have to make money in order to reinvest it in professional wrestling. I absolutely regret doing that, because I would be a lot richer if I wasn't reinvesting it. But, you know, like I say, I'm for this cause of growing wrestling. But this year, I've actually looked at it and been like, right, because it's sad, because we always do it. So like the first time we upgraded something was after the Will Ospreay High Stakes show, right? Which was the audio, right? And which was still not 100% there with, but I think if you listen to the High Stakes show at Crystal Palace and listen to what we're going to achieve this Friday at Crystal Palace, it's going to be night and day, right? But you know, we always invest the stuff when we've got the money in the bank, so to speak, because that's always a smart investment, right? But I always find it a shame that we never present the best version of ourselves at the big show. So we've spent a little bit of money on some production to hopefully to improve the quality. And again, it's one of those things where we're going to trial it out this weekend for the first time and hope we get it right, because that's another thing. You've got to get it before the show, because obviously you'd never want to trial out new stuff at the first show back. So I feel like we're learning, and one of the lessons is obviously, again, try and put that best foot forward at those shows where you know you're going to have the eyeballs on them. So that's what fans who are at Riot Cabaret can look forward to when they tune in on Rev Pro on demand. They can look forward to a better quality product. So yeah,
there you go. I was gonna say, we've got a few quick fire questions we'll give you from our patrons, if you don't mind. Like, I don't know if this one actually can be quick fire, but on the subject of like relationships, like Gareth asked, do we
married,
believe or see NXT Europe ever being a thing? And if so, like, is there? So this is more of an add-on for me. Is there like because it's easy you say about negative people on the internet. Sounds like me and JP a lot of the time, but like we hear those words, we're immediately going to jump to the negative. Like, is there a positive like version of that? Is there a version of like, oh, this is what NXT Europe could look like to you, where you're like, that would benefit all parties? That would be, if it became a thing, the ideal.
If NXT Europe came to me and were like, here's a ton of money, there's a no cut contract, and if we do manage to find a loophole to release you, there's no compete and whatever have you, that would work, right? That would work for me, right? Now, but in all seriousness, with NXT, so is there an upside? Look, so I can argue upsides for NXT UK, right? I can very easily pick apart the negatives. It's easy to do, right? First being it was pretty crap, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is NXT UK, it provided a gateway for example, Gunther wouldn't be where he is right now without NXT UK, right? Because there's not a chance he would have opened his mind to WWE had he not had almost that gateway drug of well, look, you can still live at home, you can still be with your family, we can just do, we're going to pay you like a top guy in NXT, and and then if you get over, if it works for you, maybe we might bring you out for a pay-per-view, right? And almost easing him into that mindset to the point where he's one of the most recognizable wrestlers on that roster right now, and and he's making bank and he's making real money, and I'd say as well, you could look at him and be like, well, the thing with him is like, his style of wrestling, it wouldn't work in WWE, but I think you can argue he's been able to transition that style of wrestling into WWE. Sure, he's tweaked some things here and there, but he's still authentically the same wrestler that went in, and he's still been true to himself. And not just is he true to himself, he's also fantastic on the microphone now, right? And I feel that that's something that you would only look. The only places you could pick that up are WWE, maybe AEW, and definitely Rev Pro with our new backstage comments, right? But like he's had that experience now, right?
Is he a miss for you, Gunther? Is he someone who you think at his peak on the indies, like he could have been done more with him in Rev Pro?
No, because he will tell you more than anyone. Like any time we used him, and we've used him a fair bit, and we've got matches like him versus Ishii, him versus Kojima. We did some tags with him and Thatcher. We've done a lot of shows with him. Him and Nagata. So look, I believe we did a lot with him, but he would tell you himself, like he literally said to me once, like, I need to finally have, I don't feel like when he had his matches with me, he ever quite reached his potential, right? And he will be the first to tell you that, because he was put in the position to get there, but it just, for whatever reason, it didn't happen. It's like, just for example, him and Ishii, no brainer, but like it just didn't. Like it was, you look at it.
Post match was awkward. I remember that when they chopped each other, and Ishii looked up. Ishii just didn't look happy. Like
and like at the end, I think Ishii slapped him at the end, right? But like Ishii, you need to understand Ishii. Ishii will have a 4.5-star match, and I'll be like, thank you so much, and he'll be like, I'm so sorry. Right? It's like shit, I'm so sorry, and he'll be killing himself about one spot where basically, like, maybe he I don't know, maybe he slipped, or he just he's a perfectionist, which is why he's so good. But the small things what you and I would not notice, right? And as people who actually watch wrestling and critique it, so if we won't notice it, there's not a chance that the casual fan watching it won't notice it, right? But I feel like that was a big example of one which he was very disappointed with. And like he was saying to me, I just need to have a good match for you. And I'm like, well, it wasn't like the match was bad. It's just that we'd all built up such expectations in our mind, and we didn't quite get there, right? And I think I can think of a number of occasions when matches like that were with him. So I can't look at it and say he was a miss for me in terms of, should we have done more with him? Because I feel we tried. And I think that, I was involved in his bidding war at the end when he got his deal. But like, which, you know, I feel like happy I could have helped him in that respect. But like, I feel like, yeah, like I say, like if he was still around, would we have continued to work with him? Absolutely, because he's great, you know. So I think that, you know, but he's an example of someone who absolutely benefited from NXT UK. And you look at his body of, like, if you look at his body of work, like what more could he have conceivably achieved before getting on to the next thing? Because AEW wasn't a thing at the time, right? So before conceivably going to, like, it would be either Ring of Honor, New Japan, or WWE, right? Those are the only realistic options to being able to achieve something at that time. Had AEW been around at the time, could something have been different for him? Maybe. But look, I'd still argue now he would, like, even if he went to, if AEW was a thing and he went to AEW, then I think he's still better off now where he's wound up now, right? And that's because of NXT UK. So like I say, when I'm sat here, I can look at stuff objectively. Was NXT a positive or a negative for my business? It was probably a negative, right? But as for the business in general and the lives of the wrestlers that it changed, I feel like it was a positive, right? For wrestling fans, probably a negative because you had to sit through the BT Sports Studio era, right? But but again, like, I look at that and I'm just like, how could they have? This is another one of those situations, you know, I was talking about, where I'm just like, oh, I can't watch. Like, how could they have all these tools at their disposal, right? And so many talented wrestlers as well. So it's so many talented people in production. You've got the state-of-the-art studio. You've got the WWE name behind you, right? And you've got, you know, people, no doubt, to do any minute task that you so have, right? How can you, and again, like I say, the level of talent they had at NXT UK, like, I can't sit there and critique. Like, I feel like if I was in that situation, would there be other people I would have signed instead? Probably. But with the roster they had, would you be able to create something which is very special and something which is, you know, something which is held in super high regard by wrestling fans? I think absolutely you would. And I think that was the biggest miss with NXT UK. It was just a waste of resources and money on something that could have been, you know, if it had, you know, the right vision behind it, it could have been so much more, right? So, and then you look at, and look, we can go through countless other people who wound up better off because of it, and there have been people who have, right? And then you look at NXT Europe. I'd say if WWE looks at the lessons learned from NXT UK, if there were any lessons learned, could it be something which is bigger and works? Yes, it could. Do I think it's wise for WWE to do? Probably not, right? I like, and the reason I say this is because, look, I think the smart thing to do would be sign people from Europe, take them to NXT, and teach them a WWE style. Then just send them out. Like, this is what I think AEW should be doing this as well. Send them out to promotions almost effectively on loan, right? And if you want to get a fee for them or not, like, look. There might be some people you can get, like, it's very similar to the way if I was choosing New Japan talent or a CMLL talent, right? Obviously it's great because I can get top level talent, but, you know, I just, you know, I say who I'd like to the office. They say this is the price, right? You know, they need these flights, this is a price, and I decide whether to go ahead and do it or not, right? And I feel like, you know, when you're in WWE situation, you just want guys to go out and work. Maybe you're offering them to the indies for free or just their expenses or whatever, right? Or maybe you are charging people and you're just using it as another TKO revenue stream, like they need it, right? But you can use it as another revenue stream, and you can use it to justify the cost of the contracts, right? And I feel like AEW should have a system similar, you know, where guys just go out and they get their reps in, right? So if I was to approach it, like, probably I'd look at it and say, look, identify the top talents in Europe, sign those guys to contracts, and then where basically you've got an option, almost like the WWE ID system, but, you know, more manageable in terms of, you know, not having to go, by the way, you can book these guys. So I feel like that's probably the way to do it. Then you send them out to work all these shows, and you know that when they reach his peak, right, you've got them, you can take them, right? And I feel that would probably be much more beneficial to WWE. And I feel like as well, you could look at it and say, let's try and create these regional stars, and then when we go to their countries, let's have our, like, there's never, like, one thing that I never understand is why WWE have never had someone like the British Bulldog, right? So WWE created, and look, I get to extent you say Rey Mysterio in Mexico, right? But with British Bulldog, WWE created a cultural icon for the United Kingdom. And he still resonated with the United States. He still resonated with other countries, right? But they gave UK a hero, right? So I'm looking at it and saying, is it smart business to try and sign these guys from European territories, right? Then let them go and get their reps in. Then when they're ready, so you know they're going to sink, not swim on the main roster, you take them in. Even if you want to take them to NXT first, right? You take them in, you make them stars, right? And you actually have a plan for them. And you have the mindset of, we are going to have our top, you know, French guy, our top Spanish guy, our top German guy, you know. And then when we go into these territories, right, they might only be a mid-carder in the US, right? But when we go into, if we've got a French guy and we go into France, right, he'll be headlining the show, and he might be going for the Intercontinental title or the US title instead of going for the world title. But you create something that resonates with those people, and then especially because the world is so local now, and especially because obviously you know, like on Netflix you can watch anything at any time, and now they're going more into that mindset of putting the shows live right on Netflix. So I feel like if you'd had if you got a French star going for the Intercontinental Championship on Netflix, right, and you can watch it live in real time in France, and you get the French media to get behind that, right? Then all of a sudden you've created another moment, but in France, right? You've created that WrestleMania moment where WWE has a chance to once again reset its audience, to once again to kind of get a whole new audience engaged and cultivated with the product, right? And I just feel like these are the types of opportunities that could be created if you were to reimagine what NXT Europe could be. But I feel like in order to do that is kind of, again, it's out that bubble, right? And it's almost, I know they like to have an element of control. And look, fair play. Look, I'm not sitting here telling WWE how to do their jobs, because look, if I could find the success that they've got, then I wouldn't be sat here talking to you boys right now. I'll tell you that for nothing, right? I'd be waiting for my interview with Piers Morgan, you know.
You'd be in Barbados on a beach, I imagine, as well. Yeah.
So that would be my mentality behind it. But I don't feel negatively or positively around it. Like I think for me it's business as usual. It's a warning sign to everyone who, like, even just like, look, whether or not it happens, there's murmurs of it. It's a warning sign to everyone, like, now, who, if you didn't learn from the past, right, start looking after your young talent, start thinking about storylines, start, like, you know, stop thinking about, and again, this is you know why I feel like stories are just so important with everything we do. You've got to stop thinking about you know, just putting on that big match. Don't just have, like, don't think about, for like a British standpoint, like I look at title reigns in other promotions where it's just like champion versus challenger, cool match, right? But unless you're cultivating the story behind that, and you're then developing a line of challengers, and then you're thinking about who wins the championship next, and then when that person wins a championship, who's in line after that, right? So you've got to be cultivating people on the face side and the heel side, and in all divisions. And you have to be looking at youth as well. You have to be willing to take risks with youth, right? You have to go in there with the mindset of, you know, look, I just look at someone who comes under unfair criticism, Will Caven, right? Our cruiserweight champion, or former cruiserweight champion. He got a lot of unfair criticism, right? Again, another one of those wrestlers who's a heel, right? And a heel who's disliked. But if you look at Will, and, like, look, I can tell you from a technical standpoint, you can forget about, you can look at it and you can say, well, Will Caven's not a good wrestler, right? Like people like to do, right? I can look at this from a technical standpoint and I say, Will Caven is actually an exceptional wrestler, right? I can look at it from the standpoint of other workers who love working with Will Caven because he's an exceptional wrestler, right? And I can look at it from the standpoint of, I heard the reaction when he lost the title, or when he won the title, and I heard the reaction when he lost the title. And both those times, the reactions were huge, right? And I can look at it and say, I look at Leon Cage, one of the people's favorites, which, look, Leon Cage is fantastic, right? But Leon Cage, his first match was with Will Caven, right? He had to have that match with Will Caven in order to be considered for the next one, in order to kind of smash it out the park, right? And Will Caven's someone who put him at ease and helped him have the match that he needed to have to be welcome to Rev Pro. And throughout the years, we've seen people in Rev Pro who've come in with a lot of hype, and they've just not delivered when it's got there because they put too much pressure on themselves, or they're not used to that environment, or they feel they need to wrestle differently. That's a big thing. They often feel they need to wrestle differently to the way they wrestled before, and because it's Rev Pro. But the reality is the reason you're there is because of the way you're wrestling elsewhere, and you need to do the exact same thing and not put too much pressure on yourself. And that's easier said than done. But Will Caven is the type of wrestler who is able to put people at ease and be able to bring it out of them, right? And I understand he's not the most popular wrestler in terms of he's not a quote unquote cool wrestler, right? But he gets so much unfair criticism, and which is in many ways baseless. So again, like I say, if you critique something and you have an opinion and you can explain why you don't like someone, then that's absolutely fine. But a lot of people just don't like him, or his match will be announced, not him, and I just think it's unfair, because you got to remember he's a young guy who's in the very early stages of his professional wrestling career, right? And if you look at where he's at in his career versus people who've been doing it a lot longer than him, he's actually exceptional, right? And I feel like and it might be a case of maybe you can look at it and say maybe he needs to work out how to connect better with the fans, right? But then you look at it and say, does he as a heel? Or but then we look at how can you connect better with the fans? But it's all part of the process, right? But it's a learning process. And I would much sooner put someone in who's a part of that process than a safe pair of hands. I know you guys always used to joke about, some of the British wrestlers who you just see on every single British wrestling show, right? And you can look at them without naming names. I'm sure this is springing to your minds, right? But like you can look at them and you can say, I could book those guys on my shows, right? And if I do, they're a safe pair of hands, and we know we're going to have a solid match, right? Then I might book a young wrestler, and it's a bit of an unknown quantity, right? But I've got to book that unknown wrestler because we risk them making mistakes. We risk them, not having as good a match as a person who's going to deliver a solid match. But ultimately, we have to look at it and say, in 5 years' time, these are the people we're going to be depending on, and they've got to be ready. And unless they get those experiences now, we can't throw it to the forefront in 5 years' time. And that's exactly what happened with NXT UK. Like we were, like I say, we were fine because we had built that conveyor belt. We'd had our Robbie X ready. We had our Ricky Knight Jr., our Michael Oku. We had those guys ready to kind of step up and take those spots, right? But there were a lot of promotions who were just like, who were just like, oh, well, you lot, because I don't know if you were in the Brit Res is dead lot or not, but there was a lot of people like Brit Res is dead, right? And people got so
Might
much
have started
offense,
that, sorry.
right? So many people took so much offense to it, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, what do you mean? We've got Joe Bloggs, who's the best high flyer since Will Ospreay. What do you mean? We've got John Smith, who's the best technician since Zack Sabre Jr., right? And it's just like, yes, but they might have a potential to be that, but there's a long way from achieving and that journey from actually being it and achieving it, right? And I feel like you have to start that journey while you already have Zack Sabre Jr., while you already have Will Ospreay. So I look at my roster now, and I think, like, obviously you look at someone like a Michael Oku, you feel like, well, how much longer is he going to be around for? You see Leon Slater, you feel how much longer is he going to be around for? You see Zazaya, same thing, right? So you see those guys and you're like, right, now we need to start developing in the background, right?
Connor Mills, Jay Joshua.
There you go, right? And who's got the feature matches at the anniversary show this weekend?
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? So this is what it's all about. This is what pro wrestling is all about, and this is what being sustainable and growing the industry is all about, right? And obviously, look, I can't protect myself between, maybe that layer underneath then comes and gets taken, right? And then we've just got to accelerate the next path. But if you look at, for example, look at Connor Mills, look at Jay Joshua, look at JJ Gale, look at those guys, right? And if you look at where they were like a year ago, they were still in a very good situation. They were still, ready to break out, so to speak. But we've just been able to do it in an organic fashion, right? Sure. And look, JJ Gale's like a big example. JJ Gale, he had his big match. His first big match he had was against Kosei Fujita at our first show at the Copper Box, right? And I think he'll be the first to tell you, he struggled under that pressure and he wasn't JJ Gale, right? And that wasn't the match we wanted to put forward to the wrestling world. And when you look at the match, there was nothing wrong with a wrestling match, with the match, right? You watch a match in isolation, there was nothing wrong with it, right? And you'll be like, that was a nice wrestling match. But it wasn't what either were capable of. And Fujita, again, was also in that situation where he was just finding out who he was as he was just graduating as a young lion, right? And JJ Gale was in that situation where he never had that big match and he didn't know, right? So then his next match was against Zack Sabre. His next big match was against Zack Sabre Jr., where very much, I think he will tell you as well, he played it safe, right? Now, in that match where he played it safe, he got through the match and you'd watch that match and you'd be like, that was a very good match, right? You wouldn't look at it and be like, wow, that's a blowaway, right? But you'd look at the match and you'd say that's a very good match. Now, if I was him, we'd built it up with story, and I would have taken a risk on that situation and gone into it with more venom, right? Because we'd built the story, it was there for him, but instead he treated it like, I'm gonna wrestle Zack Sabre Jr.'s match with him, right? And he did absolutely fine. There's no complaints about it whatsoever, right? But after having that experience, his next experience was, right, now you're wrestling Luke Jacobs, right? And now when you wrestle Luke Jacobs, right, you're going to take risks, right? And when you're wrestling Luke Jacobs as well, this was on the Oku Ospreay show, right? And when you're wrestling Luke Jacobs, no one's going to know who you two guys are. Right, this is the mindset of homegrown stars, right? And obviously Luke Jacobs won the match because Luke Jacobs, in our mind, is he's the next champion. So we're building him, but JJ has to hang with him, right, to show that JJ is on his level, right? And we're gonna have two UK guys, and you're gonna go out balls to the wall, and you're gonna fucking smash it, right? And that's exactly what they did. Fast forward to last year's anniversary show where JJ Gale worked Tomohiro Ishii. Again, an extension of the storyline with Luke Jacobs. I'm going to do the one thing that you can't do. I'm going to beat Tomohiro Ishii, and that winds up Luke Jacobs. That's a rivalry continuing between the pair of them, destined to fight forever. And then he fights Ishii and smashes it out the park. Now, when JJ Gale has those big match opportunities now, we have every confidence he's going to smash it out the park. But it's a process.
You sound very much like Mikel Arteta blooding Miles Lewis Skelly, Ethan Waneri, and Max Dowman.
I'd be starting Max Dowman every week from what I've seen in pre-season.
Well, exactly. He's an exciting prospect. Well, maybe if we get along to a few games this year, we'll be able to see that. We've got some sort of quick fire, daft, like sort of slightly sillier off-topic questions for you on this.
They'll kill us if we don't ask them.
Oh, they'll absolutely slaughter us if that's the case. Who would you trust most on the football theme to take a crucial penalty out of yourself, Tony Khan, Salvador Luteroth, Taro Okada, and Hiroshi Tanahashi?
Hiroshi Tanahashi.
You reckon
he's been there, he's done it, right? He's
give the eyes, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and he's got that hair. It's mesmerizing, isn't it? People would be looking at his hair and like, but I can just see Tanahashi can handle the pressure above anyone else.
Yeah, he's got that Chloe Kelly vibes in there. Maybe not the run up, but the Chloe Kelly vibes there as well.
Yeah, but it'll be a staggered run up for reasons.
Oh yeah, which would be fine. He just nail it like Julian Dix would do in the mid-90s. Another question here. What are your thoughts on celebrities in wrestling, such as Paul Walter Hauser?
Why do you try? This is a leading question, isn't it?
He's got thoughts.
I look at it as he is incredibly successful in what it's like. I don't know why you're in a high school gym on a Friday night being stiffed by a promoter. It's mate, be in a mansion, but that's my person.
But but look, so I think like he's doing it as a hobby. It's like David Arquette, isn't it? Like you do it as a hobby, and when you've got so much money, you can do stuff like that. That's fantastic, right? I think it's up to the promoters to be able to make the most of what they've got and understand and realize what they have, right? And what they have is not someone who's going to appeal to professional wrestling fans to post like his match graphics and be like, hey, hardcore wrestling fans, come and see Paul Walter Hauser wrestle. It's not the one, right? But you need to utilize it. And again, look, there's nothing wrong with promoting it to those fans, because you should promote everything to everyone, right? But you need to utilize it to. There's like a net of fans, right? And you need to go outside that net of fans to get the people who just want to see Paul Waterhauser wrestle, right? This unique time to see him wrestle. So you want to try and get those fans to come to the show, and then whilst they're there, check out everything else on the show. So I feel like there's nothing wrong with celebrity involvement in wrestling, but you need to be very clear about what your end objectives are. And the end objectives shouldn't just be like, again, it's a business, it's a partnership, right? Because I imagine that the promotions are getting him to wrestle are probably getting him for miles less than he would charge to get out of bed, right? Let alone work a wrestling match. I don't even know if they're paying him. I don't know, because some people have got so much money. It's just like, I just do it, right? So I just feel like it's a business arrangement. So you have to look at it and say, well, we know what he's getting out of it. He's getting that kick, getting to fulfill his dream, and I admire that as well, because, like you say, like, he's doing stuff with AEW as well. He's doing stuff with Ring of Honor. He doesn't need to do the smaller indies, right? But he still does it because he loves wrestling. He's getting hurt doing it as well, which is even more admirable and brave of him, because you don't know what film. He's always got hundreds of films coming out, hasn't he? So you don't know what he's putting at risk.
No one out today with Sydney Sweeney. Just chuck it out.
There you go. Yeah, but that's an example. So that film's coming out today. You should be all over this and promoting him. Because of that coming out, right? And you have to look at it as a business transaction, right? So like I say, when I work with other promotions, like, I understand other promotions are bigger than me, but we can mutually both get something out of this, and work together, right? So that's why I feel like the promotions should be looking at it and saying, look, Paul Waterhauser's more than meeting his end of a deal. He promotes stuff. He talks about stuff on chat shows and whatever have you. So, like, he's more than meeting his end of the deal. But I just feel like the promotions need to be like, look what we've got here. It's very rare we're going to get an opportunity like this, and then leverage that to get some attention. Absolutely. So nothing against celebrities at all. And I admire anyone who puts that much dedication into what they're doing.
Yeah, all from me, if you could get anybody for like I don't know, short run, let's say Summer Sizzler to an anniversary show. Is a celeb in mind? Footy player, maybe? Would that be the choice? I don't know. Maybe
obviously, I'd go with someone like Jake Paul, right? Because
true.
Obviously, he's got the sports entertainment aspect down. So I'd probably go with someone like him, because he knows the fight game. He knows how to promote. He'd understand it. Could come up with some interesting angles on how to get there. And he's an athlete as well, so I think he'd probably pick it up quite easily.
Yeah, Freddie Flintoff was up for it. He was doing interviews a while back, wasn't he? Talking about WWE.
He did some stuff. I'm pretty sure he did some stuff at Arena Mexico.
So he did. On that reality show.
Yeah.
He was good. He looked natural, didn't he?
Yeah.
Who was the other one on that one, JP? Was it Goff?
Darren Goff.
Darren Goff.
Well, I know Micah Richards has looked at it as well.
I'd definitely take Micah Richards. I love Micah Richards.
The banter, the promos. You get some good stuff.
But like Roy Keane. Imagine Roy Keane as a wrestler. Do you know what I mean?
Roy Keane came out to stop like interference from like David Francisco in a JJ Gale match against Freddie Flintoff. Writes itself, doesn't it?
But this is look, I'd be open to anyone who could make a positive difference and who wants to be. They have to want to be there. There's nothing worse than people who are there because they've been told to be there, and people who, and again, not just that, but obviously like the former WWE guys who are, I'm so much better than this. That kind of mentality. I feel like that's one of the big things with any wrestling locker room. You've got to have positivity around it, and I think like you get one bit of negativity and it spreads so quickly. Again, going back to the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, you get that negativity in your locker room. There's certain, there's like, look, there's people I wouldn't use just because I just don't want that negativity around. And be like, people are like, oh, why don't you use so and so? Like they're available, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, I just don't need that drama in the locker room because it's just gonna have a negative effect upon everything else, right? So that's what you have to bear in mind as well. So definitely, and especially with celebrities, because obviously the mentality from the wrestlers is this guy's coming in, taking our jobs. Do you know what I mean? Like, so
you get a brawl out every week if Roy Keane was there, Jesus.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Doylesy asks, what would you rather, a full complete set of WWF Hasbros or Rev Pro on Saturday nights on BBC before Gladiators?
Rev Pro Saturday nights, BBC before Gladiators. Let's go.
It fit perfectly, wouldn't it? It would.
Yeah, and then we'd make our own Hasbros, which I'd have a full set of.
Yeah. Final score: Rev Pro, Gladiators, game show, Casualty.
There
Match
we go.
of the day.
And we could also do crossovers with Casualty, where a wrestler might be injured and then they'll turn up in the hospital.
There you go.
So writes itself.
I always love those crossovers.
And if they're any good, they get off to Holby City.
Right. That's it. So
on that note, EastEnders or Coronation Street?
EastEnders all day. Get out of it. Anyone who likes Coronation Street, I love EastEnders. Come on, like even they.
Emmerdale or Brookie? Then go on. That's a harder one.
Emmerdale.
Not Brookie. Oh, that
Emmerdale's got longevity. So, and Emmerdale's gone through.
True.
I've not watched Emmerdale in a long time, but Emmerdale used to have periods of being proper hot. So, yeah, I think there was a time when Emmerdale did challenge both EastEnders and Coronation Street for their throne. It was quite an exciting summer. So, but yeah, I've not watched Emmerdale.
Were they the ECW? I don't know. I think Brookie's more ECW, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, it just burnt out. Yeah, maybe.
Family Affairs was TNA. Maybe saying that it's gone. So
is it still going? Oh, okay. Maybe Hollyoaks is TNA. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hollyoaks is still going, isn't it? But I could only watch that. Well, as soon as I graduated from university, I felt wrong watching that. I had to grow up. Like, it's a young person's soap, Hollyoaks. So yeah.
WWF or WCW?
Oh yeah. Impossible, because WWF all day as my younger self. Right, but in the appreciation of professional wrestling, I love WCW. I also feel like as a grown-up, WCW holds up a lot more than WWF does. But when I'm watching WWF, I love the nostalgia. I love the nostalgia of the superstars and all the cartoon characters and everything like that. So I'm going to call it a draw and say it's an unfair question.
I think WCW is good for straight up shows. If you jump, say, early 90s, you just watch a standalone pay per view. Whereas with WWF, I think you're better watching the series. You can watch the whole year, kind of, without chopping and changing bookers,
Being the old man in the room as well, and not having also access to Sky at that point in time, WCW was on ITV, which always made it that bit more desirable for me. Mega Drive or SNES?
SNES. So
SNES also.
My original console was a Nintendo Entertainment System, which I got. The SNES had been out for a couple of years when I got the Nintendo Entertainment System, but going back to the poor family, so please buy tickets to my wrestling shows to help me live a nicer life than I did as a child. We got the NES, and that was obviously a close crossover with the SNES. And the SNES blew my mind. Like, so I remember the family up the road had a Mega Drive, and we always used to play Streets of Rage on his Mega Drive a lot.
Okay,
and I did enjoy the Mega Drive, but because of my I guess my grounding in the Nintendo Entertainment System, you'd have to go with SNES.
Yeah, we were the same. Everyone in the street had a Mega Drive, and Mum and Dad got me the Master System for Christmas. I was devastated. It wasn't quite the same. You had to pay that Sky bill. It's understandable. Here's one will speak to your heart. Beyond the Mat or Wrestling with Shadows?
Oh, come on, that's even more impossible. You're unbelievable. You're like a horrible person. Like what?
Which one can you just? Yep. You can only quote one of them to the young people in the locker room.
Sophie's choice. This. I think we're saying both, aren't we?
Yeah, we've got to say both because there's so many great quotes. Because I'm thinking because I feel like if I'm quoting in the locker room, I feel like Beyond the Mat's good because there's such things as you've got to be a prick in this business, which is kind of funny. It's a main event. Like there's shorter, quirkier ones. Look, to quote Beyond the Mat, I guess, but it's an unfair question, another unfair question, and you've waited till the end here to try and get me. I thought you were nice guys, and now you've got the
No, we never
gotchas.
have been.
No,
To be
we're
honest.
monsters,
Can I
mate.
just tell a quick story about Wrestling with Shadows?
Oh, good.
It's a very, very quick one, right? So, I obviously Wrestling with Shadows, Beyond the Mat. Like, I believe every documentary, every person who's an aspiring wrestler should see, right? I think that I still believe Wrestling with Shadows is the most beautiful documentary. I feel like some people in today's eyes watch it and they're just like, why is he getting so stressed out about a championship belt and whatever? Because you don't understand the context of the time, right? But there's so much stuff about the Wrestling with Shadows documentary which is just absolutely fantastic. And I feel as well, Bret Hart is one of the greatest workers in the history of the business, and just being able to get some of his philosophy is just fantastic and something that everyone should take up, right? I feel like Bret Hart at the time, look, Shawn Michaels maybe appreciated more than Bret Hart, but Bret Hart, if you look at the matches on the same days against each other, Bret Hart's work stands up above all.
It holds up better, definitely. And I'm a Shawn guy, but yeah,
which is why everyone just rips off the Bret Hart spots, because out of context as well. I rip off quite a lot of Bret Hart stuff also, but
you'd be proud of you.
Yeah, he would.
Did you see that quote this week?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and I agree with him. So but yeah, so anyway, I always preach Wrestling with Shadows, and I get so frustrated with, like, I'll ask questions. Oh, here's another extension to it. I was talking to the Bryant brothers, part of their, part of his development, whatever. So you forget, like, the young, like, I think Nino's something like 22, like, Xander's like 20, and Leland's 17, right? So like, so that, and they're like, I guess they're
JP's got older.
Two of my kids are older than them.
Right, so I guess they're the wrestling equivalent of a Jackson family. Do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of, like, they're born to do this. They're born to be entertainers. But they were asking me, and like, they've got great instincts, and a lot of their stuff they do very, very well, right? So I'm assuming they're students of the game, and they're like, can you give me some feedback on what I should be watching or who I should? And I said to Xander's, like, the Angry Brian, and I was like, watch some Ken Shamrock and see what, when he goes a bit crazy, and, like, see if you can channel some of that, see if you can look at what makes him snap, and see if you can, identify that in his matches, and see if you can get some of that in yours and use it for maybe your comeback or what, just study him and see what you can get from it. Look at his facial expressions, look at his body language, whatever have you, right? And he just looked at me like I was mental, right? And I'm like, what? Like, Ken Shamrock? Nah. And, like, when they started watching wrestling, it was like when we were saying it was crap. Do you know what I mean? It was like when you had, like, John Cena versus The Miz, and that might mean after that. Like, but I
don't understand how then people become fans. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me.
Right, it says a lot about them, doesn't it? But yeah, and then I said to Nino about maybe watch some Bret Hart matches. And Nino's like, I don't really watch Bret Hart. He's like, I've only started watching, like, stuff about him recently because of how much you go on about him, right? And I'm like, are you serious? Right? And I was thinking about, I was like, you're pacing, you're selling, you're timing. It's very Bret Hart-esque, right? But then obviously he's been trained by Michael Oku, right? And a lot of Michael Oku's, like, he's I'm not saying that, like, Michael Oku's more of a Shawn guy than a Bret guy as well, actually. But Michael's actually been able to get a lot from Bret Hart also. So, like, when you look at it and you can see the similarities between Nino and Michael, that so Bret's not getting the credit he deserves, basically, right? But anyway, I'm like, who here's watched Wrestling with Shadows, right? Maybe half the people put their hands up, and I'm like, oh, the fuck, you all need to watch Wrestling with Shadows, right? And I look at Joshua James, right? And I'm like, his hands up, right? And I'm like, what's your favorite part of Wrestling with Shadows, mate? Right? And he just looks at me and he's just like, I don't know. I haven't watched it. And I'm just like, come on! Like, you lied to me as well. And he's like, well, I didn't think you were going to ask, did I? But I respect him for being brave enough to admit that he was wrong, like, that he lied. But come on. We got to watch.
The only scary thing about this is somebody telling us in the late 90s we should watch a film. Oh yeah, when's it from? The 1960s. It's like, oh fuck. Where are people
when you put it like that, right? But yeah.
No,
they're wrong. Like. The kids are wrong. We're right.
Yeah, that's it.
You may well have answered the next one on here, I think.
Oh yeah. This is an easier one, I reckon. Omega or Cena, and I don't know on this one whether it's just personal taste or... I was going to say, is it a layup if somebody said you could put one or the other in a big York Hall match?
John Cena, 100% every time. Yeah. Like, and a lot of it is because, so I think Kenny Omega on his day is the best wrestler in the world. I think the New Japan Kenny Omega, the big match Kenny Omega, the presentation of that Kenny Omega is the best wrestler in the world. But I don't think he carries himself like the best wrestler in the world outside of that. I remember like there's a promo recently he did on Dynamite. He's wearing shorts and t-shirt, and I'm like, that's not the. But it's like you can't be asked, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like you like and. Obviously, like even in his New Japan stuff, if you look at the stuff between the big matches, he'd be dicking around in 6-man tags and whatever, right? And I'm always like, you'd never catch Bret Hart doing that. You'd never catch, like, even if Bret Hart was being lazy at a house show, you'd never catch him being someone he's not authentically trying to be presented as. You'd never see John Cena being like that, you know, like. And I feel like it's about the presentation 24/7. And I feel like Kenny Omega's at the stage of his career where he should be the big match wrestler, right? Being able to watch Kenny Omega compete, it should be seen as a privilege and an honor to see this wrestler who's at the top of his game, right? And it should be almost that kind of mentality of Kenny, especially coming back from injury, Kenny being like, you know, like I can't compete on this level night in, night out, right? But I know on any given night I can reach that level again, right? And that's the question mark over Kenny Omega. Will he be able to consistently reach this level night in, night out, right? People will do stuff along the way to compromise him and make him vulnerable for those big matches, right? And then we circle those dates in the calendar. It might only be 6 times a year, it might be 12 times a year, but we know we circle those nights on our calendar when Kenny Omega's wrestling, right? And the closest thing I can give to it is like in UFC, for example, when Conor McGregor used to fight, right? That's what it was. It was the McGregor fight. Everyone on that card made bank, but we were all there to see Conor McGregor, right? We were all there to see the show on the way to it. We were all there, win, lose or draw, to see the spectacle at the end of it, right? And the more spectacular he was, the more his star rose, right? And I feel like, you know, it's akin to those big fight nights. Anytime he fought, anytime John Jones fought, you know, those just the big nights. And I remember when and almost like those big boxing matches as well, right? There's a reason why, like even like Dubois and Usyk, right? Recently at Wembley, like Dubois was outclassed, outmatched, whatever have you, right? But, and I think you could have looked at it logically going into it, right? But Dubois had that big knockout win over AJ, and then as a result, that had turned him into that star, and it turned it into the event. Can Daniel Dubois do this? Can he overcome all the odds, right? And it's like that narrative alone captivated the imagination, right? And now you've got someone who's got the track record of a Kenny Omega, who's got the laundry list of matches, you know, and he had the perfect entry to doing that after that match with Gabe Kidd as well, right? To then be like, that took so much out of me, and you know, the places that I had to go in order to get there, I'm not sure I want to be doing this anymore, you know, I'm not sure, and you know, and then something happens to an Ibushi, which then brings that out of him, you know, it's like, I can still do this, you know, but there's so many different places you can go, but like I say, like, I feel he could be that guy, but I think, but I feel like I have to pick John Cena every day of the week because of, you know, not just like just how much John Cena means to business, the star of John Cena, you know, just all the Make-A-Wish stuff he does. Someone he's genuinely probably the only real star post. I mean, you might look at stuff differently now, but like post Rock Austin, I feel John Cena was the only legitimate star, and I can look at it now, and maybe because of the exposure that WWE is getting because of the Netflix stuff and because of the TKO stuff, I can look at it now, and you could club Cody in with that. You could make an argument for Roman Reigns, but Roman Reigns isn't there as consistently, and you can look at all the misfires on the way to get in there.
More through attrition, that one, innit? They tried for so long.
Yeah, but like you can look at Roman and Cody, I guess, on that pedestal with him now. But yeah, John Cena's the guy, and obviously, yeah, if I was to take someone on my show, like John Cena.
Given.
Let's go.
Oh God, yeah. And here's a couple of places that I think John Cena would do a hell of a job for selling out. Your thoughts though? Highbury or the Emirates?
Okay. I'm going to say, I have to say the Emirates now, right? Now, the reason I say this is because we've lived in the past, we've lived in the shadow of Highbury many, many times. And I feel that the atmosphere in the Emirates now is just great on a given night, right? It's real good when it's pumping. And like, I remember, so I would like to shout out Ben Ald as well. He often he's a season ticket holder to Arsenal, and like he often manages to get me tickets, right? So that was probably the best thing to come out the Rev Pro Southside relationship. But like that and the Gordon Craig Theatre Stevenage, and the belt that Mercedes Moné carries.
Yeah, I was gonna say the belt. Yeah,
3 good things. Tick list there, right? But yeah, I just remember being at the Emirates. Like I can't remember the maybe it was against Brentford. Like Kai Havertz scored like a last minute winner, and it was like the 60 million down a drain. Kai Havertz scores again, and it was like all the way to the train station, just like, and that atmosphere is recent. Do you know what I mean? That party atmosphere. It's about like Arteta's got the people believing. I know he rubs like basically. If you're not an Arsenal fan, like you'd hate Mikel Arteta, right? Because he's
I'm an Everton fan and I
worst
love him,
type
to be
of
honest.
manager. Sorry,
I'm an Everton fan and I love him, but I'm also biased.
But yeah, I was an Everton boy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, but I just feel like he's done such a good job of making the fans believe again and making the people believe again. And I just think it's just a great atmosphere.
I would have vehemently disagreed a few years back, particularly because I was at the game when Granit Xhaka just stormed off the pitch and stuff.
Right, yeah.
And that was like
that turned into a great babyface turn, right?
Oh, it was a cracking babyface turn. Like he really did. I mean, and and his run through it was like he won a G1 climax when he was getting through the end as well. The way he'd come through. Another one on it, and you're going to say this is.
Well, can I ask quickly, JP?
Go on.
Do you feel the same as JP? If there was a WrestleMania at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, would you go? Or would you refuse?
I'd go.
JP, you're burning the place down.
I refuse to give them money. That's my thought.
I'd be there in my Arsenal shirt. Do you see that? It was one of the fights recently at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. One of the fighters came out to North London Forever in Arsenal colours.
Yes.
But then he proceeded to get knocked out. But yeah, the intention was pure. So
yeah, I can admire the intent for it as well. And he's growing up around Tottenham, just being like, I'm sick of these bastards. Here's the unfair question though: Henry or Bergkamp?
Oh.
That's
all Sean's easier, isn't it?
I have to say Henry, right? And I feel like there's no right or wrong answer, right? Obviously Bergkamp was fantastic, but I remember European nights where either Bergkamp wasn't there because obviously he was scared of flying, or he would get the boat and then he wouldn't be right for the weekend. Do you know what I mean? And like, so Henry was there, rain or shine. And I don't know. I like Henry. Like I like Henry's post-football career as well a lot. I like it when he's. I like his, the little flirting he's doing with. Is it Katie Abdo? Katie Abdo?
Yeah, CBS.
Yeah, Katie Scott. Her name is now. Yeah, I love that little flirtation love affair he's got going, where he's just so in love with her. Is just fantastic as well. So yeah.
If you want to give it a wrestling analogy, I look at like Bergkamp is like Tanahashi in the early, like when New Japan was rebuilding itself, he had to get us to that place, and then Henry came in as Okada. Like you needed that other one there.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, and
that make Arsenal together.
I love them both. I love them both. So I won't have a bad word said against either.
Brilliant. Oh, good. I'll do two quick ones, and then I'll let JP end on the big one. Hogan or Flair?
Hogan. I feel that I was never like, so my lasting impression of Ric Flair when I first started watching wrestling was he's so old. I don't know why. But you look at him now.
Like you, Benno.
He doesn't look. He doesn't look old. then, but I was like, in my head, he was like 70 years old.
Yeah, who's this little old man?
Right.
What's this fake belt he's got?
And Hulk Hogan made me believe, right? And I always, like, obviously topical at the moment, but I always remember like the Hulk Hogan, the videotape where they put in the program of him and Earthquake on there before SummerSlam, I think. And Earthquake sits on him. And so it's like, so it starts off and it's like Hogan's music, duh, 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 duh. And we're like, I just remember in my childhood jumping around my living room to that I had like the VHS tape. And I was jumping around the living room like, and then all of a sudden it's like Earthquake comes and you have to remember as well, this videotape is like, you're just watching Hulk Hogan murk people match after match after match, and then it gets to this videotape and you think this thing with Earthquake's going to be no different, right? I mean, I'm jumping up and down, right? And then all of a sudden the music takes a horrible twist and Earthquake kicks the shit out of him, sits on him, and then it goes like do 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 do, and then it turns just to this somber version of I'm a Real American, right? And I just remember being in floods of tears, right? And at the end of it, and it traumatized, I swear, it didn't matter how many times I'd watched it. I would just we watched it over and over again. Traumatized my childhood, even though I knew he's coming back at the end to vanquish Earthquake with the tugboat brother. And the end of that music video is Hulk Hogan's vest and his cross. And maybe it was the cross hanging there what got me the most, right? And it's hanging in the locker and the door just swings shut. Boom. On the last tone of the music. And I'm telling you, traumatized me. Ric Flair never made me feel like that. So that's why I
think it's a sacred cow thing for people who are a bit old, like JP, no offense, mate. But I think for us, we're Silver Vision babies, aren't we? Like, we didn't live 80s WWF, but in the early 90s, what did we watch? 80s tapes, and we feel like we lived it. I feel like with Flair, I feel the same way about like Andre. You heard about it, you get told about it, but you didn't experience it. And especially with Flair, what you experienced was Flair when he's a little bit older, and the matches he was doing were pretty much the same match over and over again, like Brett will say. And you saw that version of it first before you went back and saw the prime stuff. So I think that's the difference.
That's it. And I was trying to explain to people the other day about what a big star Hogan is, and people's heads can't comprehend, some of our younger wrestlers, they can't comprehend what a huge star he was. But in order to explain it, I kind of had to put into context where the world was then, in terms of there wasn't 100 TV channels, right? And so therefore, if you got attention, you got a lot of attention, right? And there's a difference between kind of being because he was arguing John Cena's a bigger star now than Hulk Hogan was, and I was like, no, but you don't understand, right? I said, you might look at it now and more people might recognize John Cena now, maybe, but everyone recognizes Hulk Hogan anyway. But in terms of what he's in terms of everything else, I don't think it's measurable. But you have to understand, in the world, the newspaper, look how many forms of news there is nowadays, right? There was no social media, there was no but back in the day, you had the newspaper, of which Hulk Hogan was very often the front page, even in the UK, right? And you had 4 TV channels in England, and which Hulk Hogan was prominently featured on news shows, like kids TV shows, your Live and Kick-Ins and Big Breakfasts and whatever have you. And people they just don't realize just how much look, we watched the same videotapes over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? Whereas nowadays, you watch one thing, you just move on to the next thing. You don't need to watch stuff over and over again. So I just think that it's very hard to understand what a huge star he was. You really had to comprehend the context of the day. But definitely Hogan.
Well, here's the big question, Andy.
Well, and the big one.
Oh yeah,
gotta ask.
Roast or fry up?
A roast done well would win the day. A roast done well. A roast done badly is not good, right? And as I've got older, I've appreciated the cuts of meat a bit more. I go to my it's funny, right? This is the type of human being I am now, right? So the conversations that I used to have with Shah Samuels compared to the conversations I have with him now, right? I talk to Shah Samuels about my butcher, right? Obviously, Shah Samuels has got to shoot butchers, the East End butcher, right? And I'll talk to him about my butcher, and I'd like tell him about the prices, right? And he'd be like, oh, I don't even think we could match it. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just like you got good deals there because my butcher, he buys high quantities for low price and sells for low price, right? He's great, he's fantastic, and every now and again he gets these special offers, right, on different cuts based around someone might over order, or a restaurant might order a lot of a particular thing but then only want one part of that particular thing, and then they've got the rest to sell, whatever have you. Sorry for vegetarians out there, but it's gonna upset someone. That's gonna be the main takeaway from this interview, isn't it? Andy Quildan eats meat. Who does he think he is? But yeah, but so now, like I've before I'd be all right with like the supermarket cut of meat or whatever. But you go to the supermarket and you go to the butchers and you realise there's different levels to this stuff. Like with professional wrestling, there's levels to this stuff, right? So if you get a good cut of meat for your roast, you're laughing. And also the roast potatoes are key as well. They have to be cooked lovingly and with care. Used to, when I was younger, it always used to be Aunt Bessie's, but now it'll only be, cooked from scratch, So that's where I'm going. So I'd definitely say if it's cooked well, you'd go with the roast. And yeah, like obviously, if it's cooked badly, I'd go with a fry up. But like, there's many elements of a fry up I don't like. Black pudding, disgusting. Mushrooms, disgusting. Right? But yeah, we're going roast dinner.
Yeah. They're the mid-card items on a fry. You want the main events, don't you? You want your sausage, you want your bacon, you want your hash browns, beans.
But then you do you know what I mean? Like you get your sausage, and it depends what type of sausage it is, doesn't it? So there's so many surprises there. You've got to think these things through, But and like, yeah, and such as too much bread, you kind of want a fried slice, but at the same time, it's nice to have a slice of toast. You've got to take into account. Like lots of stuff to take into account, but yeah, I'm not moving. We're staying with the roast.
Well, that's the big one. But yeah, unless there's anything else you've got, JP.
No,
we've got the big questions answered. Sorry, we've kept you as well. You did say before you'd only stay long if you were having fun, so we kept you for 3 hours.
I have to assume you were having fun.
I did. I've had a good time, so yeah. I hope that people enjoy it. And the next thing you'll get is obviously people complaining about it being too long. But if you don't like having fun, then don't listen. Basically. Yeah,
that's it.
So yeah. No, honestly, guys, I appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
So yeah, all good.
Been a long time coming.
And where can people find out more about Revolution Pro Wrestling, more about the anniversary show? Where can they get tickets?
So the main thing is revolutionprowrestling.com. We don't really update the website much, but it's a hub for all the ticket links, so you can look at all the upcoming events. Because I think what is very important for me is that yes, we're building towards this anniversary show next weekend, but we run all year long. Every show is just as high quality as another, and I genuinely believe we're trying to build one fan at a time to create long-term fans of Rev Pro, British wrestling, wrestling in general. So just check it out. Even if you can't make the anniversary shows, check out the website, check out the list of events, because chances are we'll be coming near you at some point in the future. And of course, RevProOnDemand.com is a place where you can watch all our shows. We stream them all live. They're up on VOD shortly after as well. So check that out. And yeah, of course, the big ones, the 13-year anniversary shows next weekend, Friday the 22nd and Saturday the 23rd of August, live from the Crystal Palace National Sports Centre. We've got 2 huge nights of action. The first night is Global Wars UK, where we're leveraging the relationship between our partners in CMLL, Ring of Honor, and New Japan Pro Wrestling to create really a theme of Rev Pro versus the world. Some great matches on there. Yuya Uemura versus Connor Mills, Jade Joshua versus Tomohiro Ishii, Persephone against Alexis Falcon. One I'm personally looking forward to a lot. We've got Chris Ridgway going up against Blue Panther in mask as well. We got special permission for Blue Panther to be able to wear his mask. And anyone who's seen Blue Panther recently knows, for 65 years old, that guy can move, right? And it's going to be a real spectacle to be able to see him live. And of course, we're going to induct Jushin Thunder Liger into the Rev Pro Hall of Fame. And just to clarify, yes, he will be there. Multiple people were like, are you trying to scam us? Is he actually going to be there? Yes, we would not advertise Jushin Thunder Liger unless he was going to be there. And then the second night, much more a Rev Pro theme to it, but strong, so strong. And I can't emphasize enough just how proud I am of the lineup, which is going to happen on the Saturday night as well. It's being headlined by the Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship match, with Shah Samuels putting his career on the line against Ricky Knight Jr. for the Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship. And that match is so special for so many reasons. Anyone who's followed the career of Shah Samuels knows just, he's used that retirement word a few times recently. And is this it for Shah Samuels? His friends, his family, other wrestlers are coming to Crystal Palace National Sports Centre specifically to see what could be Shah Samuels' last match. And obviously, if Ricky Knight Jr. wins, I'm sure it'll be an emotional moment for Shah and a very unpopular moment for the fans in attendance. But Ricky Knight Jr. wants to create these moments as well. So I feel like it's going to be a nuclear energy in Crystal Palace National Sports Centre. Make sure you go out your way as well to check out our YouTube channel, where you can see Shah's done conversations with myself, conversations with Dave Bradshaw, just frank conversations, honest, open conversations about himself as a professional wrestler. We speak a lot about NXT UK in there as well, what that meant to him, everything he's achieved throughout his career, and it's special. It really is special. And then across from that, we've got Leon Slater versus Michael Oku. For me, it's like these are. I said it to him. We did a sit down earlier this week, which is going up on YouTube over the weekend, and I said to him, it's weird because even though the championship's not on the line in this one, the match feels bigger than ever, because I feel like you can look at Leon Slater and Michael Oku as the two top stars in British professional wrestling, and I just think that they both have that professional rivalry with one another, and Leon Slater's got a chip on his shoulder, but so's Michael Oku. Now he's no longer the champion, and Liam Slater has added an interesting slant to that contest with the mind games he's playing with Michael Oku. So that's all going to reach to a head. We've got a lot more on that second night as well. We've got the Great British Tag League Finals. Just so much more. And maybe we might see our undisputed British Women's Champion at one, maybe both events, because money makes the world go round. So maybe, just maybe, if you're lucky, we will see that as well.
And get her an Arsenal ticket if you can do when she's over. That'd be if she's around for that Leeds game. I don't know. Maybe she'd love it there. I might have to get her an Arsenal shirt as well to wear. Yeah. So. That new away, one of those new away.
Oh, the white one, very nice.
Yeah, white one is lovely.
Yeah.
Should have got some hooky ones from Turkey, JP. Could have.
I would have done it now if I'd known. Honestly, 3 for 20 quid. There it is.
Wow.
You can tell they're hooky, but thank you so much, Andy. Massively
been amazing. Thank you.
Mate. Been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for your time, and obviously, as you said there, tickets are available. Hopefully, a lot of our lot will find their way to your shows as well. We're a little bit biased, but we're biased in the right places, and we genuinely wish you well. And it's good to see Rev Pro 5, and it has been. I've heard other podcasts to say it's been the highlight of these weekends, which is no big feat with obviously the big competition from AEW and the other companies around. And I don't see genuinely, I mean it, I don't see that changing this year. I'd say otherwise if I felt that way.
Absolutely, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your honest words always, and like people like yourselves who create feedback with a fair discussion, I think is so important. I think we've lost the art of discussion somewhere along the way. It's either. But like it's crazy though, because with Twitter, with all the bad things about Twitter, there's a lot of positives as well. So like and again, that's the discussion. In it, right? But I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your time and listening to me ramble. But yeah, I have genuinely had a good time, and I'm happy to do it again anytime, guys. So thank you very much.
Oh, brilliant! Cheers, mate. We will take you up on that offer
for sure. But yeah, in the meantime, JP, anything more for us?
All I've got to say is bye.
Good night, all.